The clatter of silverware against china stopped abruptly as my sister-in-law Amanda made her announcement. "Since I co-signed your mortgage," she declared between sips of our expensive wine, "I've decided I'm moving in next month. The guest room will do nicely." The dining room fell silent. My mother-in-law Barbara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. My father-in-law George suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes, but my husband Mark just started laughing. "Honey," he said, turning to me with that gleam in his eye I knew so well, "why don't you show Amanda who really owns First Regional Bank?" I reached for my purse, enjoying the confused look on Amanda's face. "You mean this First Regional Bank?" I asked innocently, sliding my business card across the table. "The one where I'm the majority owner and CEO." Amanda's perfectly made-up face went from smug to shocked as she read the card. Elizabeth Chin, Chief Executive Officer, First Regional Bank Group. The wine glass slipped from her manicured fingers, leaving a red stain on her white designer blouse. But let me back up and explain how we got here. I'm Elizabeth Chin, 38, and I worked my way up through the banking industry the hard way. Started as a teller during college, earned my MBA at night while working full-time, and eventually became the youngest branch manager in First Regional's history. 10 years ago, when the bank's founding family was looking to sell, I put together an investment group and orchestrated a buyout. It wasn't easy, banking is still very much an old boys club, but I had vision and determination. Now First Regional is one of the most successful regional banks in the state. I met Mark Thompson 4 years ago at a charity gala. He was the event photographer, more interested in capturing genuine moments than schmoozing with the wealthy attendees. His artistic eye and complete disinterest in my banking success intrigued me. Most people, when they find out what I do, immediately start pitching business ideas or asking about loans. I told him on our first date, "You just asked about my favorite breakfast food." Mark grinned. "Well, knowing someone likes blueberry pancakes tells you more about their character than their job title." We fell in love quickly, but decided to keep our relationship private from his family at first. Mark came from a wealthy background, old money, but had chosen to pursue his passion for photography instead of joining the family investment firm. This had created tension, especially with his sister Amanda. "She's always been the perfect one," Mark explained. "Married rich, lives in the right neighborhood, belongs to the right clubs. She can't understand why I'm just a photographer." I understood his reluctance to introduce me as a bank CEO. He wanted his family to know me as a person first, not a business connection. So when we started marriage planning, I was just Elizabeth who works in banking. Amanda, of course, had opinions about everything. A simple bank employee, she sniffed during wedding preparations. "Well, at least she has a steady job, but you really should have a prenup." "Mark, what if she's a gold digger?" We let her think what she wanted. The wedding was beautiful, intimate, and drama-free, mainly because Amanda was in Europe on one of her extended luxury vacations. When we bought our house 6 months ago, she insisted on co-signing the mortgage. "You'll never qualify for a nice neighborhood on a photographer's salary," she declared. "I'm doing you a favor. You'll need my income and credit score." What Amanda didn't know was that we'd already been approved for the mortgage through another bank, but Mark suggested letting her co-sign through First Regional, knowing it might come in handy to have documentation of her involvement later. "My sister likes to meddle," he said. "Better to have everything officially on paper." He was right. Amanda's announcement about moving in was just the latest in her attempts to control her little brother's life. She'd been dropping hints about our house being too big for 2 people and how she needed a change of scene after her 3rd divorce. Now here we were at our housewarming dinner, watching her process the fact that her simple bank employee sister-in-law actually owned the bank holding her mortgage. This is a joke, right?" Amanda stammered, still staring at my business card. "You're just a bank worker. You needed my help to qualify for the mortgage." "Actually," Mark said pleasantly, "we were already approved through Chase. Using First Regional was my idea. I thought having everything documented properly would be helpful if anyone ever tried to claim rights to our property." I pulled out my phone, quickly accessing First Regional's system. "Would you like to see the mortgage application? It's interesting reading, especially the part where you inflated your income and assets on the co-signing documents." Amanda's face went from red to white. Lying on mortgage applications was fraud, and she knew it. I was just trying to help, she whispered. By committing mortgage fraud? I asked mildly. That's an interesting way to help. Shall we discuss the implications of falsifying financial documents to a federally insured bank? Barbara finally found her voice. Surely we can work this out as a family. Amanda meant well. Did she? Mark interrupted. Did she mean well when she tried to talk me out of marrying Elizabeth? When she told everyone I was throwing my life away as a photographer? When she lied on legal documents? You don't understand. Amanda protested. I need somewhere to stay. Stephen is selling the house in the divorce and... So you thought you'd just move into our home without asking? I kept my voice calm. Based on a mortgage application you fraudulently co-signed. The reality of her situation finally seemed to hit Amanda. Please, she said quietly, don't report the fraud. It would ruin me. I shared a look with Mark before responding. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign documents removing yourself from our mortgage, documents I already have prepared. You're going to stop interfering in our lives. And you're going to get some therapy to deal with whatever makes you need to control everything. And if I don't, a flash of the old Amanda emerged. Then I'll have no choice but to report the mortgage fraud. I said simply, as CEO, I have a fiduciary duty to the bank, not to mention federal reporting requirements. George, who had been quiet until now, cleared his throat. Amanda, take the deal. Elizabeth is being more than fair. Amanda looked around the table, realizing she had no allies in this fight. Fine, she said stiffly. I'll sign whatever you want, but I still think. No, Mark cut her off. You don't get to think anything about our lives anymore. That's the point. I retrieved the papers from my home office. I'd had them prepared just in case, and watched as Amanda signed away her supposed claim to our home. Her hands shook slightly, but her signature was clear. Congratulations, I said, tucking the documents into my briefcase. You're no longer fraudulently connected to our mortgage. Would anyone like dessert? The aftermath of that dinner was both better and worse than we expected. Amanda, humbled by the exposure of her fraud and the realization that I wasn't the simple bank worker she'd assumed, retreated to a luxury spa to process her trauma. Barbara and George, however, had some serious conversations with Mark about their past treatment of his career choices. We should have supported your photography, Barbara admitted during a follow-up dinner, especially seeing how successful you've become. We had different expectations. Like Amanda's expectations about controlling my life, Mark asked pointedly. We enabled her behavior, George acknowledged, always making excuses, always letting her meddle. It wasn't fair to you. The family dynamics shifted after that night. Amanda's attempts to manipulate situations were met with firm boundaries from her parents. Her financial power plays lost their impact once everyone knew she'd been caught in mortgage fraud. Mark's photography career continued to flourish. He'd built a reputation for capturing genuine emotions in his images, particularly at weddings and other family events. The irony of documenting happy families while dealing with his own family drama wasn't lost on him. Maybe that's why I'm good at it, he mused one evening. I know what real emotions look like versus performed ones. I continued leading First Regional with the same principles that had guided my career: integrity, transparency, and attention to detail. The fact that those principles had helped expose Amanda's schemes was a satisfying bonus. We did hear through family channels that Amanda had taken my advice about therapy. Her new therapist apparently suggested that her need to control others stemmed from her own insecurities about wealth and status. She's actually doing the work, Barbara reported, sounding surprised. The therapist said confronting her behavior with clear evidence was a wake-up call. 6 months after the dinner incident, Amanda sent us a letter, not an email or text, but a handwritten letter of apology. I've been examining my actions in therapy, she wrote. My need to control Mark's life, my judgment of his choices, my assumption that money equals worth, it all comes from my own fears. I'm sorry for trying to manipulate my way into your home and for lying on the mortgage documents. You were right to stop me. Mark read the letter several times before responding. It seems genuine, he said finally, different from her usual manipulative apologies. We decided to meet Amanda for coffee, on neutral ground, to discuss moving forward. She arrived on time, dressed simply rather than in her usual designer outfit. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said immediately. "I just want you to know I'm working on myself. The mortgage fraud was a wake-up call. I could have ruined my life trying to control yours." "Why did you do it?" I asked. "The fraud. I mean, you must have known it was risky." Amanda sighed. "Honestly, I was desperate. My third divorce was destroying my image of perfect success. I thought if I could move in with you, I could pretend it was my choice to help my brother rather than admit my life was falling apart." Her honesty was refreshing. We didn't become best friends after that conversation, but we did establish a healthier relationship based on truth rather than manipulation. The experience changed how First Regional handled mortgage applications too. I implemented stricter verification procedures for co-signers, knowing firsthand how family dynamics could lead to fraud attempts. "Your sister-in-law tried to move in with you," other bank CEOs would ask when I shared the story at industry events. "What did you do?" "Used proper documentation and clear boundaries," I'd reply. "Works in banking and in family relations." Mark's photography business expanded to include corporate work, including campaigns for First Regional. His artistic eye and ability to capture authentic moments made our marketing materials stand out in the usually stiff banking industry. From being judged for my career to having my work displayed in bank branches, he joked, "Life is full of surprises." Amanda eventually bought her own small condo, with a properly documented mortgage from another bank. She sent us a copy of the approval letter with a note, "Did it right this time. No fraud needed." Our house became a true home, free from the shadow of Amanda's attempted takeover. We hosted family dinners where conversations were genuine rather than performances of status and success. Barbara and George, seeing how their enabling of Amanda had affected the family, made efforts to treat their children's choices with equal respect. They even hung some of Mark's photographs in their formal living room alongside the traditional family portraits. The business card that shocked Amanda that night sits framed in my office, a reminder that sometimes the best way to handle manipulation is with calm revelation of truth. Next to it is one of Mark's photographs, a candid shot of me at my desk, completely absorbed in work. "That's my favorite image of you," he told me, "the powerful CEO who uses her position to protect what matters, not to dominate others." First Regional continued to grow under my leadership, but with a deeper understanding of how family dynamics can impact financial decisions. We developed special training for loan officers about recognizing signs of manipulation or fraud in family co-signing situations. Amanda's attempted move-in became a teaching moment in more ways than one. She learned about boundaries and consequences. Her parents learned about enabling behavior. Mark felt validated in his career choices, and I learned that sometimes being underestimated can work to your advantage. During last year's holiday gathering, a more relaxed affair than previous years, Amanda actually made jokes about her past behavior. "Remember when I thought I could just declare myself your roommate?" she said, shaking her head. "Thank goodness you had that business card ready. Thank goodness you had the capacity to learn from it," I replied. Our story became part of family lore, retold at gatherings with varying degrees of embellishment. The lesson remained consistent: authenticity trumps manipulation, and true success isn't about controlling others. Mark and I recently celebrated our anniversary by hosting a family dinner in our house, where we alone decide who lives. Amanda came with her new boyfriend, a high school art teacher who seems to genuinely appreciate both her reformed attitude and Mark's photography. "Nice to meet someone who values creativity," Mark said, showing him his studio. "Nice to be valued for myself rather than my financial status," the boyfriend replied, with a knowing look at Amanda. She blushed but didn't defend her past behavior. Progress comes in many forms. The mortgage papers Amanda signed that night are secured in our bank vault, though we've never needed to reference them. Her therapy and self-reflection proved more effective than any legal threat. First Regional success continues to grow, built on the same principles that helped me handle Amanda's scheme: transparency, integrity, and clear documentation. My business card still opens doors, but now it's known for representing ethical banking rather than just authority. Mark's photography studio takes up the space that would have been Amanda's bedroom. The irony isn't lost on any of us. Where she once tried to insert herself into our lives, art and creativity now flourish. Our home remains our sanctuary, strengthened by the boundaries we established that night. The wine stain on the dining room chair, from Amanda's dropped glass, has faded to a barely visible mark, like the memory of her attempted takeover. Family gatherings are different now, less about performance and status, more about genuine connection. Even Amanda seems more relaxed, having let go of her need to control everything and everyone. The lesson wasn't just about property rights or banking authority, it was about the power of standing firm in your truth, about facing manipulation with facts rather than drama. Every so often, someone at First Regional will ask about the CEO who caught her sister-in-law committing mortgage fraud. I always tell them the same thing: the real story isn't about catching fraud, it's about helping someone choose a better path. Because sometimes the biggest power move isn't in wielding authority, it's in using that authority to create positive change, even if it starts with a business card and a shocked sister-in-law.
My name is Maud. I'm 35 years old and 9 months pregnant. My husband and I were on our way to visit his family, who live just 45 minutes away from us. We visit them a couple of times each month, but today was special. My sweet mother-in-law was making her famous peach cobbler, a dessert I'd been craving for weeks. She's been through a lot since losing her husband last year, but the thought of becoming a grandmother for the first time has brought her so much joy. She's a kind woman who always goes out of her way to make others feel comfortable. However, not everyone in the family is as happy. My sister-in-law, Sabrina, has been struggling with infertility for years. She's been married for 7 years and started fertility treatments 3 years ago, but sadly, nothing has worked so far. This has left her frustrated, upset, and distant. Normally, my mother-in-law tries to plan visits so that we don't overlap with Sabrina, just to avoid any drama. But today, Sabrina unexpectedly showed up while we were there. When we arrived, Sabrina greeted me with a cold smirk. "Long time no see, Maud," she said, looking me up and down. "Looks like you've gained a lot of weight. Are you sure you're not just being lazy because you're pregnant?" Her words stung, and I felt my face get hot. Before I could say anything, my husband stepped in. "Sabrina, that's enough. Maud is 9 months pregnant. Of course, her belly is big. You can't talk to her like that." Sabrina rolled her eyes and scoffed. "I'm just saying, it's not good for the baby if the mother gains too much weight. I'm thinking about her health, that's all." I could tell her words weren't out of concern. They were meant to hurt. But I took a deep breath and tried to ignore her. I didn't want to cause any more tension. The day went on, and I did my best to avoid Sabrina. But later, when I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water, she was there. Before I knew it, Sabrina stepped closer, her face full of anger. "You don't deserve this baby," she spat. Then, without warning, she clenched her fist and punched me hard in the stomach. The pain hit me like a lightning bolt, and I let out a loud cry as I collapsed to the ground. My body felt heavy, and I noticed a rush of liquid. My water had broken. Panic filled me as I screamed, "Somebody, please help." Through the pain, I managed to grab my phone and dial my mother-in-law. The world around me started spinning, and everything went black. This was supposed to be a happy day, a day filled with love and family. Instead, it turned into a nightmare that I'll never forget. "I'll try to be more careful," I said softly, trying to keep the peace. I didn't want to make things worse, but Sabrina wasn't ready to let it go. "Don't just stand there," she snapped. "If you have so much energy to talk back, why don't you clean the house? A little exercise wouldn't hurt." Before I could respond, she thrust a broom and dustpan at me, her eyes full of anger. Before I could react, my mother-in-law stepped into the room. "Sabrina, that's enough," she said firmly. "Maud is our guest, and she's here to relax." Sabrina huffed, rolled her eyes, and stomped upstairs, leaving an awkward silence behind her. I felt a mix of relief and discomfort. Even though the day had started poorly, things got better after Sabrina left the room. The rest of the afternoon went smoothly. My husband, my mother-in-law, and I enjoyed the delicious peach cobbler she had made. We sat together, sipped tea, and talked about the baby and other cheerful things. Sabrina stayed hidden in her room, and I tried not to let her bad mood ruin the day. But everything changed a few days later. I went to my in-laws' house alone to discuss some plans with my mother-in-law. When I arrived, I was surprised to find the front door unlocked. I stepped inside and found Sabrina sitting in the living room. "Sabrina? I thought you were working today," I said, trying to sound friendly. She smirked. "I took the day off." "I see you're back. Why don't you make yourself useful and clean up the mess you left last time?" I felt my stomach tighten. "I really don't feel well today," I replied, placing a hand on my belly. "I just came to talk to Mom." "Stop making excuses." Sabrina snapped. "You think being pregnant means you can just lie around all day?" I didn't want to argue, so I picked up the broom. But as I bent down to sweep, a sharp pain shot through my stomach. I froze, holding my belly, trying to understand what was happening. Before I could say anything, Sabrina's fist slammed into my stomach. The pain was unbearable. I gasped and doubled over, clutching my belly as tears filled my eyes. My vision blurred, and I felt a sudden rush of warm liquid. My water had broken. Panic hit me like a wave. "Ah! Somebody, please help!" I screamed, desperate for anyone to come. But Sabrina just stood there, watching me. Her face was twisted with anger, but there was something else, a look of satisfaction that sent chills down my spine. I fumbled for my phone, my hands trembling. I managed to dial my mother-in-law before everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My body ached, and there was an ore in my arm. Fear gripped me as I looked down at my now flat belly. "What about my baby?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I whispered weakly as I pressed the call button beside my hospital bed. Jenna came in and smiled softly at me. "You went into labor early," she said gently. "But your baby girl is safe. She's in the NICU, but she's stable." Relief washed over me like a wave, but it was quickly followed by anger. Sabrina had hurt me. Worse, she had hurt my baby. I clenched my fists, the memory of her actions replaying in my mind. Just then, the door opened and my husband and mother-in-law rushed in. Their faces were full of worry and fear. "Are you okay?" "We came as fast as we could," my husband asked, his voice shaking. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at them. "Sabrina did this," I managed to say. "She punched me. My water broke, and I—" "Calm down," my mother-in-law said gently, her voice trembling. Her eyes were wet with tears. "She won't get away with this. I promise." The next day, as if testing how far she could push us, Sabrina showed up at the hospital with her husband. She walked into my room, her face cold and emotionless. "Let's settle this," she said flatly. "We'll pay you to drop any charges." Her words made my blood boil. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted, sitting up in bed despite the pain. "You put my baby's life at risk." Sabrina's husband stepped forward, his face calm but full of arrogance.
"Just take the money, Maud," he said.
"It'll save us all a lot of trouble." "No," I snapped, my voice firm. "I'll see you in court. Get out of here." Before they could say anything else, my husband stepped in. His face was red with anger as he pointed at Sabrina and her husband. "You think you can buy your way out of this? You're lucky I'm not suing for attempted murder." Sabrina's smug expression disappeared. She stammered something about it being an accident, but none of us believed her. My husband and I were done listening. That very day, we filed a police report. The legal process was long and exhausting, but we didn't back down. Sabrina tried to play the victim, claiming she didn't mean to hurt me and was just frustrated. But the evidence was clear. My testimony, medical records, and witness statements spoke louder than her excuses. In the end, Sabrina was found guilty of assault. The court ordered her to pay a fine and attend mandatory counseling. After that, my husband and I decided to move far away. We changed our phone numbers and cut all ties with Sabrina and her husband. It was a hard decision for my mother-in-law, but she understood. We had to protect our family. A few months later, our baby girl was strong enough to come home. Looking at her tiny, smiling face, I felt a deep sense of peace. We had been through so much, but now we had a fresh start. I felt a deep sense of peace. The nightmare was finally over. We were free from Sabrina's toxic behavior, and life felt brighter. Sabrina's life, however, took a turn for the worse. Her husband left her, and she struggled to make ends meet. Despite everything she had done, I didn't feel any joy in her struggles. I was too focused on my own family, healing, rebuilding, and finding happiness again. In the end, justice had been served, and we were ready to move forward. Our little family was safe, happy, and stronger than ever. Sabrina's reckless actions that day showed how unstable she had become. Even after the assault, she didn't seem sorry for what she had done. With the support of my husband and mother-in-law, we pressed charges against her. It was a difficult decision, but we knew it was the right thing to do. After the court process ended, we moved to a new apartment in a different city. We wanted a fresh start, far away from the pain of the past. My baby girl was slowly recovering, and we were settling into a new routine. Life was starting to feel normal again. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we could breathe. One evening, I was resting on the sofa. I still felt some pain from the surgery, but I was grateful for how far we had come. Suddenly, I heard a loud banging on the front door. "Hey, I know you're in there, Maud. Get out here now, you coward." Sabrina's voice echoed through the hallway. I froze in disbelief. How had she found us? My husband was still at work, and fear swept over me. Taking a deep breath, I tried to stay calm. "Sabrina, what on earth are you doing here?" I shouted through the door, my voice shaking. "You're disturbing everyone. Please leave. No matter how many times you hide, I'll find you," she screamed. Her voice cracked, full of desperation. "You have to listen to me. It's your fault my life has fallen apart." Her words didn't make sense, but the anger in her voice was terrifying. I knew I couldn't open the door. Our building was home to families and elderly people. Despite it being late at night, Sabrina didn't seem to care that her shouting was echoing through the quiet hallways. "Sabrina, I'm sorry you're upset," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But you need to leave now. I'm calling the police." Her shouting grew louder, but I didn't wait any longer. I dialed 112 and explained the situation. 30 minutes later, I heard sirens in the distance. Sabrina's voice faded as the police arrived. That night, I realized how important it was to protect my family no matter what. Sabrina's actions were a reminder of how much we had overcome and how much we had to protect. Together, we would continue to heal and move forward, leaving the past behind. "I'm not opening the door, Sabrina," I said firmly, trying to sound stronger than I felt. My voice was steady, but inside, I was trembling with fear. "Please, Maud, just listen to me," Sabrina cried, banging harder on the door. "You've ruined everything. It's because of you I lost my husband and my life. It's not fair that you get to be happy while I'm miserable." Tears filled my eyes as I leaned my back against the door for support. Her words didn't make any sense. It felt like she saw my pregnancy as some kind of competition she thought she had lost. But there was no competition. I never wanted to hurt her, and I couldn't understand why she was blaming me for her problems. "Sabrina, you need help," I called out softly, trying to stay calm. "Hurting me won't fix anything. This isn't the way." Her tone changed in an instant, becoming sharp and bitter. "You should have waited until I got pregnant first. You should have thought about my feelings. You should have." Her rant was cut short by the sound of sirens blaring outside. Someone in the building must have called the police. Sabrina must have heard them too because her voice suddenly turned panicked.
"No."
"What do you mean the police are here?" she whimpered, her tone shaky. "Maud, please. Don't let them take me. You have to hide me." I stayed silent. I wasn't going to protect her this time. She needed professional help, and maybe this was the first step toward her getting it. 30 minutes later, the police arrived and began speaking to Sabrina right outside my door. I opened the door just a crack and explained the situation as calmly as I could. Just then, my husband came home. The moment I saw him, I broke down. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I cried as I told him everything that had happened. His face was tense, his jaw tight with anger. "She's dangerous," he said to the officers, his voice firm. "You need to take her away." Sabrina was placed in handcuffs and led away, screaming for me to help her. But I didn't. This had gone too far, and I couldn't protect her anymore. Later that night, I got a call from Sabrina's husband. His voice was shaky and filled with desperation. "Maud, I'm divorcing Sabrina," he said suddenly. "I can't do this anymore."
Please don't involve me in this mess.
I was shocked by his words.
What?
"You're just going to leave her?" I asked, stunned. "Yes," he said flatly. "I have to. If I stay, I'll lose my job. The scandal is already too much. My boss found out what happened at the hospital, and I'm being transferred to a regional office." I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and relief. Sabrina's life was unraveling, but my priority now was to keep my family safe. I can't keep covering for her. "Just leave me out of it," Sabrina's husband had said over the phone. As I hung up, my emotions were all over the place. Part of me felt sorry for him, but another part couldn't forgive the fact that he stood by Sabrina's side when she tried to bribe us. He had been just as guilty as she was at that time. Over the next few weeks, Sabrina's life continued to fall apart. The legal battle drained the little savings she had left, and her reputation was completely destroyed. She moved from one friend's house to another, trying to find a place to stay, but her behavior pushed everyone away. Eventually, she had no choice but to take part-time jobs just to survive. Meanwhile, my husband and I focused on rebuilding our lives. We changed our phone numbers again to ensure Sabrina couldn't contact us. We cut all ties with her and anyone connected to her. Most importantly, we poured all our energy into caring for our daughter, who was still recovering. A few months later, our little girl was finally strong enough to come home from the hospital. Seeing her grow healthier and stronger each day made every struggle worth it. Her tiny giggles filled our home with joy, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we could breathe again. One afternoon, as I sat by her crib watching her sleep peacefully, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. We had been through so much pain and fear, but we were finally free from Sabrina's toxic presence. My mother-in-law stayed in touch with us and apologized every chance she got. Though it hurt her to see the family so broken, she understood why we needed to keep our distance. We had to protect ourselves and our daughter. I had heard rumors about Sabrina. People said she had fallen deep into debt. With no friends, no family, and nowhere to go, she was barely surviving. Part of me felt a small flicker of pity for her. But then, I remembered the fear I felt when she banged on my door, screaming. I remembered the pain and the risk she had put my daughter through. That flicker of pity disappeared just as quickly as it came. Sabrina had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. After all the chaos, my husband and I decided it was time for a fresh start. We moved to a new city, far away from any reminders of the trauma we had endured. We made new friends, found a supportive community, and began focusing on our future as a family. Slowly, the scars Sabrina had left began to fade. Our daughter grew stronger every day, her laughter filling our home with warmth and happiness. Watching her smile, I knew we had made the right decision to fight for our peace. Sabrina's story ended on a sad note. With her reputation ruined and no one left to support her, she became a shadow of the person she used to be. She had lost everything, her family, her friends, and even her sense of stability. But by the time it all fell apart for her, I no longer feared her. At one point, Sabrina had been a constant source of pain and stress in my life. Her actions had put my daughter and me at risk, and for a long time, I lived in fear of what she might do next. But now, that fear was gone. What replaced it wasn't anger or pity, it was indifference. I didn't care about Sabrina's fate anymore. My focus had shifted completely to my family. After everything we had been through, my only priority was our happiness and safety. That was all that mattered to me now. It took time to reach this point. The struggles my husband and I faced were heavy, but they were worth it because we won our freedom. Justice had been served, and we had worked hard to rebuild our lives. Moving to a new city helped us heal. We found a fresh start in a place where Sabrina's shadow couldn't reach us. We made new friends, found a community that supported us, and began focusing on the future. Our daughter was a constant reminder of how far we had come. Watching her grow stronger each day filled our hearts with joy. Her laughter brightened our home and gave us hope. She was proof that no matter how hard things got, we could overcome anything as a family. My mother-in-law stayed in touch with us and was supportive throughout everything. Though she felt heartbroken by the fallout with Sabrina, she understood our need to distance ourselves from the pain. She wanted us to live in peace, even if it meant keeping her relationship with Sabrina at arm's length. Every now and then, I would hear rumors about Sabrina. People said she was working part-time jobs just to survive and was deeply in debt. She had no real support system left and seemed to be barely making it. There were moments when I thought about feeling sorry for her, but those feelings didn't last long. When I remembered the fear she caused, the risks she took with my child's life, and the way she treated me, any pity I felt disappeared. Sabrina had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. As for me and my family, we were finally free. Free from Sabrina's toxicity, free from her anger, and free from her shadow. Our life was filled with love, peace, and joy again. In the end, that's what mattered most. Sabrina's story had ended, but ours was just beginning. Together, we had found happiness, and nothing was more important than that. Growing up in Australia, I never planned to hide my success. It just happened that way. My parents worked hard to provide for me and taught me the importance of education and perseverance. Maria, knowledge is the one thing no one can take away from you, my father used to say, often after long nights driving his taxi to pay for my education. My mother worked 2 jobs, and together they made sure I had everything I needed to thrive. Their sacrifices paid off. I graduated at the top of my class in finance and secured a job at one of Asia's largest banks. By the time I was 29, I had become the youngest division head in the bank's history, managing over $100 billion in corporate loans. Despite these accomplishments, very few people knew about my professional life. I preferred to keep things simple and let my work speak for itself. On weekends, I liked helping out at my friend's small cafe. It was my way of staying grounded and taking a break from the pressures of corporate life. One rainy morning, a man named Scott walked into the cafe. He ordered a latte, and I added a little heart to the foam as a small touch. When I handed it to him, he smiled warmly and said, "This is the best coffee I've had in months." "The secret is making it with care," I replied, smiling back as I wiped down the counter. Scott started coming back every weekend after that. Over time, we struck up conversations about everything: his job as an architect, his dreams of designing sustainable buildings, and his strong bond with his family. I found myself looking forward to his visits. He didn't seem to care about material things or the size of my paycheck. He valued me for who I was, not what I owned. When he finally asked me out, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Our first date was at a humble hawker center. We shared plates of char kway teow and laughed about little things. It wasn't fancy, but it felt perfect. I fell in love with Scott's kindness, his honesty, and the way he treated everyone with respect, no matter who they were. Before meeting his family for the first time, Scott gave me a heads up. "My family is a bit traditional," he admitted. "They can be judgmental about things like career and status." "Don't worry," I told him confidently. "I can handle it." Little did he know, my success wasn't something I felt the need to flaunt. I was happy keeping things low-key, enjoying life as it came, and finding joy in the simple moments, like the ones I shared with Scott. I wasn't ready for Brandon Routh, Scott's father. He was a self-made real estate tycoon who commanded attention the moment he entered a room. His presence was overpowering, and his confidence seemed unshakable. His wife, Madison, was just as intimidating, always dressed in designer clothes, her hair styled to perfection. Then there was Scott's sister, Lauren, who had inherited her mother's sharp looks and an equally sharp tongue. When I mentioned that I worked at a cafe, her dismissive glance said it all. "A cafe?" Brandon's voice boomed across the dinner table. "Scott, I thought you said she went to university." "She did, Dad. Maria has a degree in—" "Clearly not putting it to good use," Brandon interrupted. In this family, we value ambition and excellence, not serving coffee. I noticed Scott's face turn red, but he didn't say a word. Madison, seated gracefully at the table, touched her pearl necklace, a sign I later learned meant she was about to say something cutting. "Dear," she began, her tone dripping with false sweetness, "perhaps you could help Maria find a more suitable job. The cleaning company we use is always hiring." Lauren chuckled and added, "At least she'd get health insurance." Despite their remarks, I kept my composure. Years of handling high-pressure negotiations had taught me to stay calm. "I enjoy my work at the cafe," I replied with a polite smile, "but thank you for your concern." The rest of the dinner was a blur of subtle insults and patronizing advice. On the drive home, Scott apologized repeatedly. "They'll come around," he promised. "They just need time to get to know you." But they didn't. Over the next year, as Scott and I grew closer, his family's disdain only grew stronger. Every family gathering felt like a test of endurance. Brandon never missed a chance to remind everyone of my lowly job. Madison made sure I was seated far from important guests at dinners. Lauren openly suggested Scott find someone more suitable. When Scott proposed, their reaction was exactly what I expected. "A cafe worker?" Brandon roared. "Have you lost your mind?" "Dad, I love her," Scott said firmly. "Love won't maintain our family's reputation," Brandon snapped. "If you marry her, don't expect any support from me."
But Scott stood by me.
We had a small, beautiful wedding without his family. In the months that followed, I continued working at the cafe on weekends, finding peace in the simple routine while managing billion-dollar deals during the week. Scott understood my choice to keep my career private. He loved me for who I was, not for what I earned. Then came the annual Routh family reunion. "We have to go," Scott insisted. "They're still my family." Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping they might have softened over time. I was wrong. The reunion was held at Brandon's massive mansion, a sprawling estate that exuded wealth and status. From the moment we arrived, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. As we walked into the Routh family reunion, I felt the familiar sting of judgmental stares. From across the garden, Lauren's sharp voice rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, the cafe girl is still around?"
"Still no real job, I see."
How persistent. Her words were met with scattered laughter, and I forced myself to stay calm, even though my hands clenched at my sides. Brandon, standing at the center of the gathering, raised his glass and called for attention. His annual family address had begun, with champagne flowing and his booming voice recounting the family's many successes. He reveled in their achievements, speaking as if their accomplishments were unmatched. Then his eyes landed on us.
"Ah, Scott."
"Come here, tell everyone about your latest project," he said, waving Scott over. His gaze barely flickered in my direction before he added with a smirk, "And your wife can serve drinks. It's what she's good at, isn't it?" Laughter erupted around us, but before Scott could respond, a sudden commotion broke out near the house. Brandon's secretary hurried over, her face pale. "Mr. Routh, there's an urgent call from the bank." "Not now," Brandon barked, waving her away. "We're celebrating." "Sir, it's about the emergency loans," she said, her voice trembling. "They've been denied." Brandon froze, his confident smile vanishing. "Impossible. I spoke with the division head yesterday." "Sir," the secretary continued, "the new CEO is personally reviewing all of your loans. They've requested a meeting tomorrow." I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket, my secretary calling. I stepped away to answer, already suspecting the reason for the call. "Ma'am," my secretary said quietly, "Chin Developments has been flagged for major accounting irregularities. The audit shows systematic misrepresentation of assets." I nodded, keeping my voice calm. "Send me the files. I'll review them tonight." When I returned to the party, chaos had taken over. Brandon was no longer the commanding figure he'd been earlier. His face had turned pale, and he was shouting into his phone while Madison hovered nearby, wringing her hands. Lauren approached me, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Looks like Daddy's company is in trouble. Not that you'd understand anything about business matters. More champagne?" I smiled politely. "No, thank you." but I do have a question. How's your position at your father's company? Lauren straightened, her smug expression faltering slightly. I'm the executive vice president of operations. Interesting, I replied, tilting my head. And what exactly do you do? Her smile faltered further, and for once, she was at a loss for words. It was a rare moment of satisfaction in a long evening filled with condescension. I manage important things, like the shell companies in the Turks and Caicos Islands, I said casually, locking eyes with Lauren. Her glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. Heads turned toward us, but she quickly hissed, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you know, I replied, my tone light. The ones hiding your father's debt. Or maybe the inflated property valuations. Before she could respond, Brandon's booming voice cut through the garden. Everyone, the party's over. Family emergency. Guests began murmuring and trickling out. As the crowd thinned, Brandon turned to Scott, pulling him aside. Son, he began, his voice tense, I need your help. The bank is being unreasonable. Your architecture firm has good connections with other banks, doesn't it? Scott looked uneasy, shifting his weight. Dad, we're a small firm. We don't handle loans like that. Useless. Brandon snapped, his voice rising. Just like your choice of wife. If I lose this company, it's your fault for bringing bad luck into this family. That was it. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Stepping forward, I held up my phone. Mr. Routh, I said calmly, I believe we have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9. He barely glanced at me, his frustration obvious. This doesn't concern you, coffee girl. Actually, it does, I said, opening my banking app and showing my executive profile. I'm the CEO. You'll be meeting. The silence that followed was absolute. Brandon's face morphed from confusion to disbelief to outright horror. Madison's pearl necklace slipped from her hand, clattering to the ground. Lauren looked as though she might faint. That's impossible, Brandon stammered. Maria Chun, CEO of the corporate banking division at Australia United Bank, I said, keeping my voice steady. Your loan applications crossed my desk last week, and the irregularities were concerning. Scott stared at me, his mouth slightly open. Maria, he began, his voice soft. All this time? I smiled gently. I wanted to be loved for who I am, not for what I own, I explained. You gave me that. Your family, on the other hand, not so much. Brandon straightened up abruptly, his businessman instincts taking over. Well, this is wonderful news, he said, forcing a smile. We're all family here. Surely we can work something out. Family? I repeated, arching an eyebrow. Like when you called me a gold digger at our wedding. Or when you told your business associates that Scott had married beneath his station. Madison stepped forward, her arms outstretched in an almost pleading gesture. Darling, we were only trying to protect our son, she said sweetly. Surely you understand. I tilted my head, studying her. Protect him? I said with a faint smile. Funny, it feels more like protecting your ego. But don't worry, I'll protect Scott now. Your company, though, that's a different story. I understand perfectly, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. You judged me, humiliated me, and treated me like I wasn't good enough because you thought I was beneath you. And now you want my help? Lauren stepped forward, trying to smooth things over. Maria, sweetie, we were just teasing. It was all in good fun. I ignored her and turned to Scott. Did you know about your sister's role in the company? Scott shook his head, confusion clear on his face. She said she was managing operations. I nodded, keeping my tone steady. She's been helping your father hide debt and inflate assets. The audit shows years of financial manipulation. Brandon's face turned a deep shade of purple. Now, wait just a minute. You can't just. I can, I interrupted firmly, and I will. Tomorrow's meeting isn't about loans, Mr. Routh. It's about fraud. His face went pale, the bluster draining from him. You wouldn't dare, he sputtered. Family? I said softly, shaking my head. Let me tell you something my father, yes, the taxi driver you mocked at my wedding, taught me. True family supports you, believes in you, and loves you no matter your status. You've done none of those things. I reached for Scott's hand, holding it tightly. The authorities will be in touch tomorrow. I suggest you prepare your lawyers. As we turned to leave, Madison's voice rang out, desperate. Wait, what about Lauren? She was just following orders. I stopped at the door, glancing back. Actions have consequences, Madison. Lauren made her choices. She'll face the same investigation as everyone else. The car ride home was silent for a while. Finally, Scott broke the quiet. Why didn't you tell me? I sighed, glancing at him. Would you have treated me differently if you knew? He thought for a moment, then shook his head.
No.
I fell in love with you, not your job. That's exactly why I fell in love with you, too. I smiled softly, squeezing his hand. I'm sorry for keeping this from you. I just needed to know that our love was real. Scott nodded, his expression thoughtful. So, what happens now? I exhaled, knowing the road ahead would be difficult. Your father's company will face a full investigation. With the evidence we've gathered, there will likely be criminal charges. Lauren, too, if she's found responsible. And us? Scott asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I smiled gently. That depends. Can you handle being married to a woman who earns more than your entire family combined? Scott laughed, the tension breaking at last. I think I'll manage. But no more secrets, okay? I smiled, leaning my head on his shoulder. No more secrets. As the city lights blurred past the car window, I felt a sense of relief. The truth was out, and while the future was uncertain, I knew Scott, and I would face it together. The next morning, everything began to fall apart for the Chin family. At precisely 10 a.m., Brandon arrived at my office, flanked by his lawyers. The confident, arrogant tycoon I had seen so many times before was gone. In his place was a man who had finally realized he was no longer the most powerful person in the room. I slid the audit report across my desk, keeping my tone steady. The investigation uncovered systematic fraud spanning 6 years. Falsified property valuations, hidden debts, shell companies. It's all documented here. One of his lawyers attempted to intervene. We can explain. There's no need, I interrupted, my voice firm. This evidence has already been forwarded to the authorities. Brandon leaned forward, his voice pleading. Maria, please think about what this will do to the family name. I met his eyes, unflinching. Like you thought about my reputation when you told everyone I was a gold digger? Before he could respond, my secretary entered the room. Ma'am, the police are here. What followed was a media frenzy. Headlines screamed the downfall of the Chin family empire. Chin Development's CEO arrested for fraud. Cameras captured Brandon being escorted out of the building, his face pale and his head bowed. Hours later, Lauren was also taken into custody, clutching her designer handbag tightly as officers led her away. Madison, unable to handle the disgrace, had a very public meltdown at the country club. Scott stayed by my side through it all, though I could see the pain in his eyes as his family crumbled. One evening, as we watched the relentless news coverage, he took my hand. They did this to themselves, he said quietly. You just exposed the truth. Weeks turned into months, and the investigation uncovered even more than I had anticipated. Brandon had been running an elaborate scheme, using inflated property valuations to secure massive loans and channeling the money through shell companies. Lauren, far from being a passive participant, had played a key role in coordinating the fraud. Her position as executive vice president had been little more than a cover. The trial was swift. Brandon was sentenced to 9 years in prison, and Lauren received 6. Madison avoided criminal charges, but lost everything during the asset forfeitures. The family's sprawling mansion and luxury cars were seized, leaving her with nothing. One crisp autumn day, as golden hues blanketed Australia's gardens, Madison showed up at my office. Her once flashy designer outfits had been replaced with simple cotton. Her expression was a mix of exhaustion and regret. I know I have no right to be here, she began, her voice trembling. But I need to say something. I gestured for her to continue, curious about what she had to say after everything that had happened. I was wrong about you, Madison began, her voice trembling as tears filled her eyes. So terribly wrong. We judged you because we thought wealth and status were everything. But now I'm alone, living in a small apartment, working as a sales clerk. And I finally understand, character matters more than money. Her hands shook as she continued, her words heavy with regret. You were kind to us, even when we were cruel to you. You could have destroyed us completely, but instead, you let the law do its job. That's real class. I studied her face, searching for any sign of insincerity, but all I saw was genuine remorse. For the first time, Madison seemed vulnerable, even human. What do you want, Madison? I asked quietly. She wiped her tears and looked down. A chance. I know I don't deserve one, but I'd like the chance to apologize to you and Scott properly. And to try to be better. 7 months later, we hosted a small dinner party at her home. Madison arrived, carrying a tray of homemade dumplings, a skill she had learned in her simpler, humbler life. She was different now. There was no pretense, no haughty air. She was genuine, softer, and much more grounded. Scott was healing too. He had begun visiting his father and sister in prison, trying to mend the broken pieces of his family and working through years of dysfunction. As for me, I continued working weekend shifts at the cafe. Not because I needed to keep my career private anymore, but because I genuinely loved the simplicity of it, making someone's day better with a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. One morning, a young woman came into the cafe. She looked tired and defeated. Rough day? I asked, drawing a heart in the foam of her latte. My boyfriend's parents think I'm not good enough, she sighed. Wrong background, wrong job. I smiled, remembering my own journey. Let me tell you a story about family pride and what really matters. Life has a way of teaching us its most valuable lessons in unexpected ways. For Brandon and Lauren, it took prison to realize their mistakes. Madison learned through humility and starting over. And I learned that being true to yourself is worth more than any amount of wealth or status. Scott and I are expecting our first child now. We've decided to name her Olivia, a reminder that even in the hardest situations, mercy and forgiveness can make all the difference. Madison is excited to become a grandmother, and even Brandon, through his letters from prison, seems to be reflecting on the kind of legacy he truly wants to leave behind. The cafe still stands, a quiet reminder of where our story began. Sometimes, customers recognize me as the banking CEO who serves coffee on weekends. They often ask why I still do it. I simply smile and say, because it's where I feel most at peace. People often ask me why I still work at the cafe. My answer is simple. Every cup of coffee is a chance to make someone's day a little better. At the end of our lives, isn't that what really matters? They usually smile whether they understand or not. But I know my truth. Success isn't about power, revenge, or proving others wrong. It's about staying true to yourself, being kind even when it's hard, and believing that everyone, even those who hurt us, deserves a chance to change. As I write this, I'm sitting in the cafe, watching the sunrise cast a soft glow over the city. It feels like a fresh start every day, full of hope. Scott will join me soon, as he does every weekend. Madison might stop by too, bringing her homemade dumplings. Life isn't perfect, but it's real, full of lessons learned and second chances. Sometimes, as I make coffee or review billion-dollar deals, I think about my father's words. Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you. He was right, but he missed something. Integrity, compassion, and the courage to stay true to yourself. Those are things no one can take from you either. And, to me, those are the greatest measures of success. I never imagined that a simple photo could turn my life upside down, but that's exactly what happened last Saturday. There I was, standing next to Mr. Olivier, the company director. We were both smiling as he shook my hand. The caption read, "Finally got that promotion. Hard work pays off. Career milestone." I didn't think much about posting it, just another career update for social media. I had no idea how wrong I was. My name is Rachel, and at 24, I had finally gotten my first big break at Marshall & Associates. I moved up from an entry-level manager to department head. It wasn't easy. I spent 4 years working overtime, giving countless presentations, and drinking more coffee than I want to admit. But I did it on my own, and that meant everything to me. I was still riding the excitement of my promotion when my phone buzzed. The number wasn't saved, but I knew it right away. My mother. 8 years of silence, and now, out of nowhere, she was calling me. My hand shook as I stared at the screen. Hellos. My voice came out quieter than I wanted. Rachel, sweethearts. My mother's voice was exactly as I remembered, sweet, but fake. It was the tone she used when she wanted something. Your father, and I just saw your post. We're so proud of you.
Proud.
That word hit me like a slap. Where was their pride when I needed it most? Thanks, I said, gripping my desk to keep steady. We should celebrate. Why don't you come over this weekend? We can throw a proper party for you. The whole family would love to see how successful you've become.
The whole family.
That meant Madison, my younger sister. The favorite. The golden child. The one who could do no wrong. I'll think about it, I said, my throat tight.
Please do, darling.
We've missed you so much. It's time to put the past behind us, don't you think? After we hung up, I sat there, my heart pounding. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at nothing. 8 years of silence, broken because of one social media post. 8 years since I walked out of that house, promising myself I'd never go back. 8 years of building a life without them. My hand brushed against the medical alert bracelet on my wrist. It warned about my severe peanut allergy, the same allergy my parents treated like an inconvenience and Madison used for her cruel jokes. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind. Family is who treats you like family, not just who shares your blood. She was my real parent. For the past 8 years, Grandma had been there for me. She supported me through college, believed in me when no one else did. The words, proud of you, kept repeating in my head. It's strange how those words can feel so empty coming from one person, and so full of love from another.
I looked at the photo on my desk.
It was me and Grandma at my college graduation. She was smiling, truly proud of me. Not the fake pride my parents suddenly seemed to have now. The phone call from Mom brought back everything I had tried to forget. The past came flooding back, and it hurt just as much as it did back then. Madison was 4 years younger than me, but from the moment she was born, she became the star of the family. Everything revolved around her. I got clothes from discount stores, while Madison wore designer outfits. My parents used expensive cameras to capture her every moment, while my school achievements were stuffed into drawers and forgotten. I remember my 11th birthday so clearly. I had been hoping for an art set I'd seen, a simple kit with colored pencils and a sketchbook. It wasn't anything fancy. Instead, I got a pack of number 2 pencils.
You need these for school anyway, Mom said.
That same year, for Madison's 8th birthday, my parents turned the entire backyard into a Disney Princess Wonderland, complete with a hired Sabrina. Madison's just more artistic, Mom would say when relatives questioned why they treated us so differently. She needs proper tools to develop her talent. I still remember Aunt Marjorie speaking up at a family dinner. Children should be loved equally. This isn't right. Mom waved her off like it was nothing. Oh, Marjorie, you don't have kids. You wouldn't understand. Our girls are just different. Madison has real potential. The worst part wasn't the gifts or the parties. It was how they made me feel, like I wasn't good enough. Like I didn't matter. When I won first place in a state math competition, I expected a congratulations from my mom. Instead, she said, "That's nice, dear, but did you see Madison's painting? It's displayed in the school hallway." My grandmother saw through it all. "This isn't right, Camille," she would tell my mom. "You're raising one child to feel entitled and the other to feel worthless." "Please, Mom," my mother would respond with an eye roll. "Madison is gifted. Rachel is just ordinary. We're being realistic about their abilities." Madison quickly learned how to take advantage of her position. If she broke something, she'd blame me, and my parents believed her without question. If she spilled juice on my homework by accident and I got upset, she'd cry, and somehow I'd end up looking like the bad one. Once, she even told her friends not to play with me because I was the boring sister. When I got accepted into the advanced mathematics program at school, Madison had a small role in a school play. Guess which event my parents went to? I sat alone in the math classroom during the awards ceremony, watching other parents beam with pride at their children. My certificate was signed by my teacher and the principal, but my parents never even saw it. "Your sister needs us more," Dad would say if I tried to tell them how I felt. "She has real talents to nurture. You're more independent." Independent. It wasn't a compliment. It was their excuse for ignoring me. Even our relatives noticed what was happening. At family gatherings, everyone would go silent when Madison made a dramatic demand for attention or purposely left me out of activities. The adults would exchange awkward glances, but my parents acted like they didn't see it, or maybe they chose not to. Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. My surprise came in the form of a peanut butter sandwich at Grandma's house when I was 13. I had eaten peanut butter plenty of times before. It was actually one of my favorite foods. But that day was different. "Want a sandwich, sweetheart?" Grandma asked, spreading her famous peanut butter and honey mix onto bread. I nodded eagerly, watching her spread the creamy peanut butter. 3 bites in, I knew something was wrong. My throat started to tighten. Breathing got harder and harder. I remember dropping the sandwich, my hands grabbing at my throat. What happened next is still blurry in my memory. Grandma's quick thinking saved my life. She immediately recognized the signs of anaphylaxis and called 911. I remember her holding my hand in the ambulance. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the fear in it. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Just keep breathing." My parents showed up at the hospital about an hour later, looking annoyed that they had to leave work. Mom tapped her foot impatiently as the doctor explained what happened. "She has a severe peanut allergy," the doctor said. "Sometimes allergies like this can show up suddenly, even if there were no problems before. She'll need to carry an EpiPen at all times, and you'll have to check every food label carefully. Cross-contamination can be just as dangerous." Dad nodded, but his eyes were on his watch. Mom was already typing away on her phone, probably messaging Madison's dance instructor about being late for pickup. The ride home was even worse than the hospital. They waited until we were in the car to really show how they felt. "This is just perfect," Mom muttered. "As if we don't have enough to deal with already," Dad added. "First the math tutoring, now this? Everything with you has to be so complicated, doesn't it, Rachel?" I pressed myself against the car door, trying to make myself as small as I could. My throat still hurt from the reaction, but their words hurt even more. The next few years were a careful routine of reading labels and carrying EpiPens everywhere I went. Grandma made sure I had proper medical alert bracelets and taught me how to speak up about my allergy. She even called the school to explain how serious my condition was. Madison, of course, found endless ways to make fun of me. She'd wave peanut butter sandwiches in front of my face, laughing when I flinched. "Oh, sorry," she'd say, pretending to be innocent. "I forgot you're allergic to everything now." At family gatherings, she'd shout, "Be careful, everyone. Rachel might die if she eats the wrong thing." Everyone would laugh awkwardly, and I'd feel like even more of an outsider. My parents never corrected her. If anything, they seemed irritated by the extra attention I needed. I learned to pack my own food, check every label 4 times, and never trust food I didn't personally check. It was exhausting, but it became my normal. When I graduated high school, it should have been a moment of triumph. I earned a full scholarship to Northwestern State University. I had done it all on my own, maintaining straight A's, working part-time jobs, and staying careful with my allergy. The acceptance letter felt like proof that all my hard work had been worth it. While I was studying late into the night, Madison's loud music would shake the walls of the house. But now, I had something to show for it. The moment I announced my college acceptance is burned into my memory. "I got into Northwestern," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Full academic scholarship." "That's nice, dear," Mom said without looking up from her plate. "The thing is," I continued, gripping my fork tightly, "I'll need help with housing. The scholarship covers tuition, but not accommodation. I've looked into the costs and..." No, Dad's voice was firm and flat. You chose to apply to a college in another state. That was your decision. We're saving for Madison's education. She's planning to go to Riverside in 3 years, and that's not cheap. I stared at my plate, fighting back tears. Across the table, Madison smirked and twirled her pasta slowly, like she was enjoying the moment. But it's just the housing cost. I tried again. The scholarship covers everything else. Rachel, Mom cut in sharply. We've made our decision. If you want to go to college out of state, you'll have to figure out housing on your own. Right then, the front door opened. Grandma walked in holding a congratulations balloon and a small gift bag. Her smile faded as she looked around and saw my red eyes, Madison's smug face, and my parents' cold expressions. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Madison giggled, always ready to make things worse. "Oh, Rachel got into college, but she'll be living on the street because Mom and Dad won't pay for her housing. They're saving for my Riverside education instead." The room fell silent. Grandma's expression darkened. "Is this true?" she asked quietly, but her voice was sharp. When no one answered, she continued, "Camille, John, how dare you? Your daughter earned a full scholarship, and you won't even help her with housing." "Mom, please," my mother sighed. "Madison's education," Dad added quickly. "Madison's education?" Grandma's voice rose with anger. "What about Rachel's education? What about supporting both your children?" Then she turned to Madison, who still wore that smug look. "And you," Grandma said, her voice colder now, "you're becoming a cruel, spoiled child. I'm ashamed of how you're behaving." Madison's face crumpled instantly, and she burst into tears, her favorite trick when things didn't go her way. Mom and Dad jumped up to comfort her, shooting angry glares at Grandma and me. "This is exactly what we mean." Mom snapped at Grandma. "Rachel and you're always causing problems, always making things difficult." Something inside me broke. I didn't say a word. I just stood up, left the dining room, and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. I pulled out my old duffel bag and started throwing in clothes. A few minutes later, Grandma appeared in the doorway. "Pack everything you need, sweetheart. You're coming home with me." "But college," I started. "It'll be taken care of," she said firmly. "I'll pay for your housing. You focus on your studies and building your future." 30 minutes later, we walked out of that house together. Behind us, my parents' angry voices and Madison's fake sobs echoed through the walls. In that moment, I felt something shift. I was leaving behind the people who had always made me feel small and unwanted. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt before, hope. College life was everything I had dreamed of and more. My tiny apartment near campus became my sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe without feeling like I had to walk on eggshells. Grandma visited often. She never missed a birthday, a holiday, or any special moment in my life. My parents and Madison, on the other hand, became like ghosts. No calls on Christmas. No cards on my birthday. Not even a text during graduation. 8 years of complete silence. So when I found myself standing on their doorstep after that phone call about my promotion, it felt unreal. The house looked exactly the same. The cream-colored walls, the perfect lawn, and the brass door knocker I used to stretch to reach as a child. Mom opened the door with an overly cheerful "Rachel." Her voice sounded rehearsed. She pulled me into a hug that felt stiff and unfamiliar. The living room hadn't changed either. Madison's achievements still dominated the space. Her Riverside degree hung proudly above the fireplace, the center of attention. Madison sat in Dad's old armchair, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked at me except to roll her eyes when Mom started gushing about my promotion. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," Mom kept saying, her words feeling empty after 8 years of silence. "Aren't we, John?" Dad nodded from a spot on the couch. "Very proud. Moving up in a big company like that, it's impressive. We need to celebrate properly," Mom continued, her voice shifting into the familiar tone she used when planning Madison's big events. "A big family gathering right here at the house. Everyone would love to see you. Aunt Marjorie, All your cousins. And Grandma too? I asked pointedly. Of course, Mom said quickly, though I noticed the slight grimace she tried to hide. We want to make things right, Rachel. It's been too long. How about 3 weeks from now? That'll give everyone time to make arrangements. Every instinct in me screamed that this was wrong, but I found myself nodding anyway. Sure. That sounds nice. The 3 weeks leading up to the party felt strange. Work kept me busy with my new responsibilities, but my phone buzzed constantly. My suddenly attentive family couldn't stop messaging me. Mom sent daily texts about the party preparations. Madison, who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly sent me a friend request on social media. The message that came with it read, "Time to put the past behind us, sis." Grandma was thrilled. Over one of our weekly dinners, she said, "This is all I've ever wanted, for my family to be whole again." Finally, the day of the party arrived. It was warm and sunny, a perfect day for a gathering. I pulled up to my parents' house and saw cars already lined up along the street. Inside, the house buzzed with activity. Aunt Marjorie's daughter, Lori, was running around with her phone, recording everything like a little documentary filmmaker. The smell of catered food filled the air, and I quickly noticed that everything was nut-free. That was a surprise. Rachel. Grandma's warm hug greeted me first. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Aunt Marjorie hugged me next. "We're so proud of you, kiddo. Department head at your age? That's incredible." Madison stood by the stairs, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She greeted guests with a perfectly practiced smile, like she was at a beauty pageant. Meanwhile, my parents floated around the house, acting like perfect hosts, as if the last 8 years hadn't happened. When everyone finally sat at the large, decorated dining table, Mom stood and clinked her glass for attention. "We're so happy to have everyone here today," she began with a big smile. "As you know, we're celebrating Rachel's promotion." She paused as everyone clapped politely. It's wonderful to see her finally finding her footing in the corporate world. I should have known the word "finally" was a red flag. And speaking of success, Mom continued, her voice brighter now, "I'd like to take a moment to talk about our Madison." She launched into a long speech about Madison's achievements, graduating Riverside with honors, her artistic talent, and how gifted she was. I sat there, frozen, as Mom finished with this. "And now that Rachel has this wonderful position and a role in management, we're hoping she can help her incredibly qualified sister join this prestigious company." The table went silent. I felt Grandma's eyes on me and saw Aunt Marjorie shift uncomfortably in her chair. Lori's phone stayed focused on me, recording every painful second. "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the pressure, "I'm not in a position to hire anyone. I'm a department head, not a director. I don't make hiring decisions." Mom's smile tightened, but she didn't give up. "Surely, with your new influence." "Excuse me," I said, cutting her off as I stood. "Mom, Dad, can we talk privately?" They followed me into the kitchen, and their fake smiles disappeared the moment we were alone. "I thought this was supposed to be a celebration of my promotion," I said quietly. "Not a networking event for Madison." "Don't be selfish, Rachel," Mom snapped. "Madison needs this opportunity. Family helps family." "Selfish," I repeated, stunned. "After 8 years of silence, you only reach out because you want something from me. And I'm the selfish one?" Dad's face hardened. "We've given Madison every advantage, invested everything in her future. The least you can do is help your sister now that you're in a position to do so." We walked back to the dining room, the tension trailing behind us like a storm cloud. I sat back down at the table, trying to ignore Grandma and Aunt Marjorie's worried glances. While we were gone, the catering staff had served the main course, some kind of fancy chicken dish with a creamy sauce. I took a couple of bites, my mind still spinning from the conversation in the kitchen. The sauce had an unusual flavor.
Nutty.
Suddenly, my throat felt tight. Panic hit me like a wave as I realized what was happening. "Peanuts," I gasped, my hand shaking as I grabbed for my purse, fumbling for my EpiPen. "There's peanuts." The room started to spin. Chairs scraped across the floor, and voices rose in panic. Grandma's voice broke through the noise. "Someone call 911. After that, everything became a blur, shadows, noise, chaos. The last thing I felt was my throat closing and Grandma's hands holding mine. I woke up to the steady beep of hospital monitors. My throat was raw, and my body felt heavy. Grandma was sitting beside my bed, her face tired and full of worry. "Oh, thank God," she whispered, leaning closer when she saw my eyes open. "We almost lost you, sweetheart. The doctor said it was one of the worst reactions they've ever seen." I tried to speak, but the pain in my throat was too much. "Don't try to talk yet," Grandma said, squeezing my hand gently. "You've been out for several hours. The EpiPen and paramedics barely got to you in time." I managed to whisper, "The food they knew?" Before Grandma could answer, Aunt Marjorie burst into the room, followed closely by Lori. Lori held her phone tightly, her face unusually serious. "Rachel," Aunt Marjorie said, her voice shaking with anger, "there's something you need to see." "Lori, show her." Lori stepped forward, her hands trembling as she held out her phone. "I was recording everything at the party," she said quietly. "I caught this when you were in the kitchen with your parents." On the video, the dining room came into view from a spot near the dessert table. I could see myself leaving the room with my parents. A moment later, Madison stood up, walked over to my place setting, and reached into her designer purse. She pulled out a small jar, stirred something into my food, then sat back down. The smirk on her face was unmistakable. "That's peanut butter," Aunt Marjorie said, her voice hard. "Your sister deliberately put peanut butter in your food, knowing full well about your allergy." I stared at the screen, unable to look away as the scene replayed. Madison, my own sister, had tried to. She could have killed me. She knew exactly what she was doing, Grandma said softly, her voice breaking. The room fell silent as we watched the video again. Madison's actions were so casual, so deliberate. That tiny smirk as she stirred the peanut butter into my food made it clear. This wasn't a mistake. It was planned. I left the hospital against the doctor's advice, fueled by a mix of rage and disbelief. The video Lori had sent me felt heavy in my pocket, as though it carried the weight of everything I had just been through. When I pulled up to my parents' house, my hands shook on the steering wheel. Inside, they were all sitting in the living room, Mom, Dad, and Madison, acting like nothing had happened. As if I had nearly died at their dinner table just hours earlier. "What are you doing here?" Madison asked, barely looking up from her phone. "Shouldn't you still be at the hospital being dramatic?" "I know what you did," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I know you put peanut butter in my food." Madison's head shot up, her face twisting with outrage. "How dare you accuse your sister?" Mom snapped, jumping to her feet. "Haven't you caused enough trouble?" I pulled out my phone, opened the video, and pressed play. The room went silent. The only sound was the video playing. Madison walking to my plate, stirring peanut butter into my food with a smug smile. The color drained from Madison's face. Then, incredibly, she laughed. "Oh, come on. It was just a prank," she said with a shrug. "You're always so serious about everything." "A prank?" My voice shook with anger. I could have died. "Do you understand that?" The doctor said, "I barely made it." "Oh, please," Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. "You're being dramatic. Madison was just having a bit of fun." "Fun?" I stared at them, stunned. I had an anaphylactic reaction. My heart nearly stopped. Dad's voice turned cold as he spoke. "Listen carefully. If you even think about taking this to the police, you're no longer our daughter. We'll disinherit you completely." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. These people weren't my family. They never had been. I turned and walked out without another word. My hands were steady now as I got in my car and drove home. I knew exactly what I had to do. Sitting at my computer, I uploaded the video to my social media. Below it, I wrote, "Today I learned what family truly means, and these people are not it. My sister deliberately poisoned me with peanuts, knowing I have a life-threatening allergy. My parents called it a prank. This is the last time I will ever call them family." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years commented in shock and anger. Aunt Marjorie shared the video with her own scathing words. Friends and colleagues reached out, expressing horror and support. My parents and Madison fought back, leaving comments calling me an attention seeker and claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But the video spoke for itself. The next morning, I walked into the police station and filed a formal report. That afternoon, my parents' lawyer delivered a letter to me. It was official. I had been disowned and removed from their will. Later that day, Madison posted a tearful video online, trying to play the victim. Madison posted a tearful video about how I was destroying the family with my lies, but I wasn't alone. Grandma called me that evening. "I've spoken to my lawyer," she said firmly. "I'm cutting them off completely. You're my only heir now, Rachel. You've always been more my daughter than Camille's, anyway." I sat on my couch that night, reading the flood of messages on my phone. Support poured in from real family members, friends, and colleagues. My phone buzzed with a text from Lori. "You're still my favorite cousin. Mom says you can come over for dinner anytime." 8 years ago, I had walked away from a toxic family. This time, I was running toward a real one. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. Sometimes you have to build your own. My name is Laura, and I'm 33 years old. I work as a web designer now, but I used to be an office worker. These days, I'm a freelancer, taking on contracts instead of working at a company. I do all my work from home. My husband, Jerry, is 6 years younger than me. He works in sales for a company that deals with home appliances, so his job keeps him moving around a lot. Jerry and I are pretty different. I like to work quickly and efficiently using my computer, while he's more steady and patient, even if his sales take longer. Jerry can be a bit clumsy at times, but I find that part of him really sweet. We actually met at a group dating party. I only went because they needed more people, but Jerry was very interested in me right away. He didn't care about the age difference and told me, "I like you, that's why." I wasn't really interested at first, but he kept trying and eventually, I started to like him back. Jerry is a kind person who cares a lot about family. Jerry has a younger sister named Olivia, who is 8 years younger than him. When we first started dating, she was just 15 and in middle school. She was a surprise baby, much younger than her siblings, and is the family's pride and joy. She does really well in school, and her teachers think highly of her. Jerry is always so proud when he talks about her, but there's also something that makes him worry. He's told me many times that his parents want Olivia to go to a prestigious private high school, but money is tight for them. Jerry managed to go to college, and sending Olivia to a private school would put a big strain on their finances. Private schools are expensive, and even though Olivia wants to go, it's a heavy burden for the family. Jerry believes she would understand if they explain the situation to her. Still, his parents really want her to have this chance. They've worked hard in agriculture all their lives and don't want their kids to go through the same struggles they did. That's why they made sure Jerry could go to college. It's tough to go against his parents' wishes, especially since they've sacrificed so much. Because of this, Jerry works part-time on weekends and saves as much money as he can. I sent the money I saved to my parents. I was really surprised when Jerry told me that. Even though he's 6 years younger than me, he seems a lot more mature. Looking back, I think Jerry and his parents were putting a lot of pressure on Olivia, but back then, I thought they were just a good family, caring about her future. 3 years after we started dating, I married Jerry when I was 32. It's been a year since our wedding, and we're still enjoying being newlyweds. We haven't had a single argument, and I get along well with Jerry's family. Our marriage feels stable and happy. Right now, we're focused on our work, so we don't have any kids yet. Even though we're getting older, we still hope to have children someday, and we'll think about it when the time is right. I'm not too worried about it, though. But I do have one concern, and it's about Jerry's close relationship with his sister, Olivia. This fall, Olivia started high school at a well-known private school in the city. Since it's far from the countryside where she used to live, she moved to an apartment close to our house. Jerry's parents asked him to look after her, which I understand. The problem is Olivia is at our house all the time. "Jerry, are you home?" she'd call out, showing up at our door again and again. "I'm nearby, so it's fine," she'd say with a smile, sitting down on the couch and hugging my husband. She was always cheerful, while Jerry looked a bit uncomfortable, though I think he secretly enjoyed it. Watching them, I could see how close they were as siblings, but I couldn't help feeling a little jealous. "Olivia, would you like some tea or juice?" I asked. "Tea," she replied quickly, in a way that felt a bit rude to me. I wanted to tell her that's not how you ask, but I kept those thoughts to myself and said, "I can make it for you this time, but next time you'll have to do it yourself. I'm working from home, and I can't just stop whenever I want." Then I went to make the tea. Olivia can act polite when she wants to, but when it's just the two of us, her attitude changes. "Oh, my friend's calling," Jerry suddenly said, grabbing his phone and leaving the room. As soon as the door closed, Olivia's expression turned cold. "Why did someone like you marry my brother? You're not good enough for him. Did you blackmail him or something?" I kept my calm and replied with a playful smile, "Well, maybe I know some big secret about your brother, and that's why I did it." "Huh, what nonsense," she said, clearly annoyed. "I'm not scared of you. It's so annoying to be treated like a kid. If you were younger and cuter, it would be better." "You're way too old for me to talk to," Olivia said, with a smug look on her face. "Well, I guess I do seem old to a high school student like you," I replied, trying to stay calm. "But you're older than my brother," she continued. "You should be earning more and supporting him. Working from home probably pays the same as a part-time job at a convenience store." "I could make that much too." I was shocked that Olivia would say something like that. She's still so young and has no idea. "Actually, I make more than that," I said. "Really? I don't believe it. There's no way you earn much. Jerry must be paying most of the bills, right? You should be thankful for his good income," she said, crossing her arms. I was stunned. She didn't believe me at all, and I didn't know how to explain it. I just stood there, not saying anything, feeling frustrated.
"See?
You can't even argue back," she said with a smirk. "And don't think I'm going to stay quiet about this." It was clear that Olivia just wanted to pick a fight. I decided it was easier to stay quiet and let her complain. Suddenly, I realized Jerry's phone call had ended. I could hear his footsteps coming back toward the living room. As soon as he entered, Olivia's face lit up and she smiled sweetly. "Jerry, was your call okay?" she asked, her tone completely different. "Yeah, it was just a quick confirmation," he said, sitting down on the sofa. "That's good. Drink your tea before it gets cold," I said, handing him the cup. "Thanks," he replied. The way Olivia switched from being cold to sweet as soon as Jerry showed up was almost shocking. It felt like she was a completely different person when he was around. Being alone with Olivia was definitely not easy, but when she only acted out with me, I decided to just see it as childish jealousy. I didn't want to cause any problems between Jerry and me, so I never told him how she really acted. As a result, Olivia grew bolder, knowing I wouldn't fight back. "Hey, what's for dinner tonight?" she asked, leaning over the kitchen counter. "Stew," I answered, keeping my tone light. "Okay," she said, giving a little shrug. Olivia came over again today, but this time something unexpected happened. While Jerry was in the bathroom, she came up next to me as I was making dinner and looked over my shoulder. I felt the tension rise between us, but I tried to ignore it. Then suddenly she did something I never saw coming. "Oops, my hand slipped," she said with a fake smile, and before I could react, she grabbed the pot and dumped it into the sink with a loud crash. I stood there, stunned, as the sound of the pot hitting the sink echoed in the kitchen. The stew I'd worked hard on was ruined, and I didn't know what to say. The stew I had carefully made was now splattered all over the sink. I quickly turned off the stove, feeling a mix of shock and frustration. Meanwhile, Olivia just stood there with a smirk on her face. "Are you okay?" "I heard a loud noise," Jerry said, rushing in from the living room. "Sorry, I accidentally dropped the pot because she startled me," Olivia said smoothly, lying without missing a beat. "Laura, are you okay? Did you get burned?" Jerry asked, looking worried. "Yes, I'm fine," I said, not wanting to make a scene. I was overwhelmed by how easily Olivia twisted the situation. I didn't tell Jerry the truth right then. Up until now, her actions were just words, but what she did was dangerous. If things had gone wrong, I could have been seriously burned. I knew I couldn't ignore this anymore. After Olivia left, I told Jerry everything that had happened. Really? Did Olivia actually throw the pot on purpose?
Jerry asked, shocked. Yes.
Before, she would just say mean things, but this time she crossed a line, I said.
I'm really sorry.
I didn't realize she could do something like that. It's partly my fault for not paying attention, and she can be very sneaky, Jerry said, clearly upset. I'll have a serious talk with her. I worried that telling Jerry might strain his relationship with his sister, but I knew I couldn't keep quiet any longer. The next day, Jerry called Olivia and gave her a warning. That evening, she came to our house to apologize. I'm truly sorry, she said, looking down. It's okay as long as you understand, but please don't do anything dangerous again, I said firmly. Olivia seemed sincere, and I decided to forgive her. I thought the issue was behind us, but I had no idea what would happen next. A few weeks later, Jerry and I were planning a trip for the upcoming 5-day weekend. One evening, while I was chatting with Jerry about the details, Olivia interrupted. Jerry, are you planning to go on a trip? She asked. Yes, we're going away for the long weekend, Jerry replied. A trip? I want to go too, Olivia said, surprising me. This was supposed to be a trip for just the two of us. Sensing my discomfort, Jerry gently explained, this trip is to celebrate our wedding anniversary, so it's only for us. That's not fair. I want to come too, Olivia protested. Sorry, Olivia, Jerry said patiently. We'll plan a family trip another time. For now, why don't you go back home and spend the weekend with Mom? We won't be around if something happens, and I'd be worried. Olivia didn't look happy, but after Jerry asked her several times, she finally agreed. We went on our trip, and it turned out to be a wonderful getaway. For the first time in a while, Jerry and I had time just for each other. We visited tourist spots, bought souvenirs, and tried delicious food. We even picked up some treats for Olivia, hoping it would help her attitude change. But on our way back home, something unexpected happened. We got into a taxi at the station after our trip, and when Jerry went to pay with his credit card, the driver frowned. Strange, your credit card seems to be rejected, he said. That's odd, Jerry replied, looking confused. Mom, is the card not working? If so, I'll just pay in cash. I'll go get some cash from the house. Could you please wait a moment? I'm really sorry, I said to the driver, who was still trying to process Jerry's card. It seemed the card reader wasn't working, and since we didn't have much cash left after our trip, I decided to run home to get some money. As soon as I opened the front door, something felt off. Nothing seemed out of place, but there was a strange feeling in the air. Pushing aside my unease, I headed to the living room. Everything looked normal when I carefully opened the door. Olivia, are you home? I called out. Yes, I'm here, came a reply from our bedroom. I was confused. Olivia was supposed to be at her parents' house. Feeling worried, I hurried to the bedroom. Olivia, what are you doing in here? This is our bedroom, I said, but something was very wrong. The room wasn't just clean, it was nearly empty. The dresser and desk were gone, and a lot of other things were missing. My pillows and cushions weren't there. I opened the closet, and all of my clothes were gone, along with my accessories, little keepsakes, and even my graduation album. My things had vanished. I turned to Olivia, feeling a growing sense of panic. Hey, it looks like only my things are missing. What happened? I asked. Olivia laughed loudly, her tone mocking. Oh, you noticed? All your stuff was like trash, so I threw it away. Why would you do that? I asked, shocked. I just don't like you, she said coldly. That apology I gave was just for show. It was for my brother's sake, not yours. I told him that I'm still really angry. It drives me crazy that he spends his money feeding you and taking you on trips. So I decided to kick you out. You're just a low-income home worker. You don't belong here. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Olivia was shouting now, her anger spilling out. I had finally had enough.
Fine.
If that's how you feel, I'll leave, I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. But don't regret this.
Ha.
I won't regret anything. Just get out, she snapped. Oh, and I left your work bag and computer. If I threw those away, it would affect your job, not just you. They're in the living room. Take them and go. I went to the living room, grabbed my work tools, and headed back to the taxi. By chance, I ran into Jerry in the elevator. The card finally worked, but you took so long. Is something wrong? He asked, puzzled. Just ask Olivia, I said quietly, my voice shaking. I answered calmly, even though Jerry looked shocked. I held my anger back and quietly left the apartment. I went straight to a hotel and booked a room for the night. Jerry called me several times while I was on my way, but I waited until I was settled in my room before calling him back. Laura, I'm so sorry, Jerry said as soon as he picked up. Olivia has gone home now. I had no idea things would turn out like this. I think she got upset because I told you the truth. What do we do now? Should we report this to the police since so many of your things were thrown away? The police? I asked, a little surprised. No, I'm not going to do that. Even though I'm shocked about losing my keepsakes, things can be replaced. If we go to the police, they'll probably just see it as a family problem. I'm more worried about Olivia and her future. Can you help? Of course, Jerry said, sounding determined. I don't want her to keep acting like this. Tell me what we need to do. With his encouragement, we decided to make a solid plan to address Olivia's behavior. We agreed to be firm with her, letting her experience the real consequences of what she had done. Olivia needed to understand that acting out against an adult in her 40s wouldn't be taken lightly. 3 months went by after I left home. I was staying peacefully at my parents' house, and although I missed Jerry, we saw each other on weekends and stayed in touch, so things were okay. I started getting used to my new life, and, to my surprise, I found it quite pleasant. I enjoyed my mom's homemade meals and felt relieved to have a break from household chores. However, during those 3 months, Olivia had visited Jerry several times. From what Jerry told me, she seemed happy, thinking that we might divorce. I could imagine how smug she must have felt, assuming she had won. But life isn't that simple. One evening, after work, I was helping my mom prepare dinner when Jerry suddenly called. Did she show up? I asked. Yeah, Jerry replied. She's pretty panicked. It seemed Olivia had finally realized things weren't going the way she expected and was now desperate for Jerry's help. I had seen this coming and, without hesitation, put down the kitchen utensils. I'm coming home, I told Jerry. When I arrived back at the house, the familiar atmosphere soothed me. I took off my shoes and walked toward the living room. Everything seemed calm, almost normal. Laura, you're back, Jerry said, greeting me as I walked in. But as soon as I stepped inside, I saw Olivia. She was crouched on the floor, staring up at me with narrowed eyes full of anger and confusion. Why are you here? She said sharply. I told you to leave. I don't have time to deal with you right now, Olivia said, her tone sharp. I took a deep breath, keeping my calm, and replied quietly, I heard you might get expelled because of unpaid tuition. Is that true? Shut up. This has nothing to do with you. Olivia snapped. My brother was paying for it, but suddenly the payment stopped and he won't tell me why. What's going on? She raised her voice, clearly upset. Jerry stepped in and said, I was waiting for Laura to come back before explaining everything. What do you mean? Olivia demanded, confused. I looked at her and spoke softly. Actually, I'm the one who's been paying your tuition. Olivia's eyes widened in shock. The tuition for her private high school is about $80,000 for 4 years. By the time she reached her 3rd year, I had already paid $40,000. If I don't pay for the next year, she'll have to leave the school. Jerry and your parents can't afford those payments, which is why I decided to handle it myself. Olivia stared at me, speechless. How could you pay so much? You just work from home, she finally said, her voice shaking. I may work from home, but my job is the same as when I was an office worker. In fact, I've taken on extra work, so my income has gone up, I explained. Then why did you keep this a secret? She asked, tears filling her eyes. I didn't want to cause problems between you and Jerry. I was willing to put up with a few harsh words for that. But when you threw away my things, that was crossing the line, I said calmly. That's a lie. No one told me you were paying, Olivia shouted, looking desperate. You don't have to believe me, I said. But the truth is, if I stop paying, you won't be able to finish high school.
No.
I don't want to drop out, Olivia cried, breaking down in tears. Then you need to apologize for what you've done, I said firmly. Why should I? She said, still defiant. Olivia, your behavior has been wrong, Jerry said, stepping in. You have the freedom to go to a good high school in the city because of Laura. If you keep acting this way, you really might have to leave school. Olivia hesitated, her face twisted with emotion. Laura, I'm sorry, she said softly, barely above a whisper. What was that? I couldn't hear you, I said, not letting her off the hook. I'm sorry. I've thought about my behavior. Please let me stay in school, she pleaded, kneeling and crying. Are you truly sorry? I asked, watching her closely. Yes, I've thought about everything. I wouldn't be apologizing if I didn't mean it, she said, still in tears. But I didn't sense any real remorse from her. All right, I said slowly. Then from now on, you'll take over all the housework. What? She gasped. Since you threw away my belongings, you need to make up for it. You'll help with the daily chores and take responsibility, I said firmly. Why should I have to do that? She protested. If you don't like it, that's fine, I replied calmly. But in that case, I won't be able to pay your tuition anymore, including the cost of the school trip, I said firmly.
Huh? No.
I can't miss the school trip. That would be awful, Olivia exclaimed, looking panicked. Then you'll need to do the housework every day for a year, as I said. If you don't agree, I might have to report what you did to the police, I replied calmly. The police? Are you serious? Olivia's voice shook. You haven't shown any real regret. I don't see another way, I said, holding my ground. Okay, I understand. Please don't go to the police, she said, her face going pale and drained of energy. It seemed that my firm stance had an effect, and she finally seemed to be taking it seriously. After that, Olivia did exactly as I asked and handled the household chores daily. She learned to clean, do laundry, and cook, getting better at each task as time went on. It was clear that her hard work was paying off, her skills improved, and she started to take pride in them. Eventually, she found joy in cooking and even began to experiment with recipes. Some of her dishes turned out so well that she started inviting family and friends over to share them. From that point on, Olivia's attitude toward me changed. Jerry also helped guide her, keeping a close eye on her behavior. For a full year, she managed the housework, and little by little I noticed a positive shift in her personality. She began to say thank you for small things, and her attitude softened. The hardness in her seemed to slowly fade away. In her final year of high school, Olivia worked hard on her entrance exams and was accepted into a university. She came to me, her face full of joy, and said, "Thanks to your help, I was able to finish high school. I'm truly grateful. You did a great job." "Congratulations," I replied, truly happy for her. I genuinely wanted to support her as she moved on to the next stage of her life. Olivia had become an important part of our family, and we both agreed to leave the past behind and start fresh. One day, she came to me with a surprising request. "I want to handle my university fees on my own using a scholarship," she said quietly. I couldn't hide my surprise. "Are you sure? Do you really want to do that?" I asked. "Yes, I want to manage everything on my own," she answered confidently. "Olivia," I said, deeply moved by her decision. It was clear she was growing up, becoming more independent, and my heart swelled with pride. Jerry was also touched by how much she had matured. "If you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask," he told her warmly. I spoke gently, and she looked at me with gratitude. "Yes, thank you so much," she said. After that, Olivia started her university life. She was busy but happy, managing her studies, part-time jobs, and club activities. She worked hard and passed all her courses each year. By her final year, she was focused on writing her thesis. In the end, she got a job at the place she had always wanted to work. Olivia is now a fully independent adult, and we have no worries about her future. Meanwhile, Jerry and I welcomed a child a few years ago who is now 6 years old. The three of us are living happily together, and Olivia often visits to play with our son. At first, I wasn't sure how things would go, but I'm truly thankful that Olivia has changed and become closer to our family. We look forward to keeping our family's strong and warm bonds for years to come. Just as I stepped into the room, I saw Jack. But what happened next left me completely shocked. His eyes were filled with anger as he marched straight toward me. Before I could understand what was happening, he grabbed my hair and started dragging me across the floor. My heart was pounding, and every second felt like the ground was slipping away. Then, with one harsh shove, he pushed me out of the hotel door. Everything went black. My name is Helen. My first job after college was as an assistant at Smith & Jacobs law firm in Hartford. It was always busy there, phones ringing nonstop. I loved the fast-paced environment. It kept me on my toes while I was still learning. That's when I met Jack. He worked in the purchasing department, which was close to the legal offices. One day, I noticed him arguing on the phone about a delayed shipment. After hanging up, he caught me watching and said, "Suppliers," rolling his eyes. "Rough day?" I asked with a smile. "Every day's a battlefield here," he replied. "You're new, huh?" "Yeah, I just started this week." "I'm Helen."
Jack.
"Welcome to the madness. Don't let the chaos scare you off." Soon, we started having lunch together. Navigating the big cafeteria was easier with someone who knew the place. Jack was easy to talk to, had a quick sense of humor, and wasn't afraid to share his opinions. One lunch turned into many, and before long, we were grabbing drinks after work. Our conversations shifted from work to more personal topics. Jack told me he was an only child, adored by his mother but constantly criticized for not living up to her expectations. "You haven't met my mom yet," Jack said one evening, "but brace yourself when you do. She has this image of the perfect woman, and trust me, no one is ever good enough." After a while, our friendship turned into something more. A year later, Jack proposed. We had a small wedding, just the way we wanted, and bought an apartment together with the help of my grandmother's savings. Life with Jack was mostly good. We had our share of small arguments, things like forgetting to buy milk or whose turn it was to clean. Nothing serious, just normal couple stuff. Then, everything changed. I was constantly exhausted, and the smell of coffee, something I loved, made me feel sick. One morning, barely able to get out of bed, I decided enough was enough. I booked a doctor's appointment, thinking I might have the flu. Sitting in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine without actually reading it, I finally heard my name called. Dr. Scott, always straight to the point, asked me some questions, ran a few tests, and then said, "Well, Helen, congratulations are in order. You're pregnant." "Pregnant?" I repeated, stunned. I repeated the words, feeling shocked. "Are you sure?" "Quite sure," Dr. Scott said with a kind smile, handing me the test results. "But you need to be careful. Your body is showing some warning signs. Nothing too serious, but you need rest and less stress." I nodded, though my mind was racing. Pregnant. How would Jack take the news? I couldn't tell him over the phone. This was something we needed to talk about face to face. When I got home that evening, I found Jack sitting on the couch, focused on his phone. My hands felt shaky as I said, "Jack, we need to talk." He looked up at me. "What's wrong?" "I went to the doctor today," I began. "We're going to have a baby." Jack's face changed, but it wasn't the happy reaction I had hoped for. "A baby, Helen? This isn't great timing. We haven't even traveled yet, like we planned. And a baby is such a huge change." A pain hit my chest. "I know it's unexpected," I said softly. "But isn't it also kind of amazing? We're going to be parents." Jack ran his hands through his hair, something he always did when he was stressed. "I don't know, Helen. It's too much. Too soon." "Too soon for family with me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "No, that's not what I mean," he said quickly. "I just thought we'd have more time. More time for just us." The conversation went around in circles. Jack kept saying the timing was wrong, and I kept trying to focus on the positives. By the end of it, Jack shut down completely, leaving me feeling more alone than ever. What should have been a joyful moment was driving us apart. The next day at work, I went to see my boss, Mr. Bryan. I needed to make changes, as per the doctor's advice. "Mr. Bryan, I said nervously. I need to ask for something. I'm pregnant, and there's some complications. Could I work from home for a while? Mr. Bryan, always more understanding than I gave him credit for, didn't even hesitate. Of course, Helen. We'll set up whatever you need. Take care of yourself and that little one. Hearing his support gave me a little hope. But when I told Jack about the work-from-home arrangement that evening, his reaction was cold. So, you're just going to be home all the time now? He asked. I thought you'd be happy, I said, trying to stay calm. This will help me keep the stress down. Helen, you're not listening. Jack snapped. I told you. It's too soon for all of this. I went to bed early that night, feeling the distance between us grow even wider. As I lay there in the dark, the reality of my situation hit me. This journey wasn't going to be easy. Every day, the air in our apartment felt heavier, like an invisible cloud hung over us. Even when the sun was shining outside, it didn't lift the weight. Jack seemed to drift further away, his affection fading fast. Little changes I made for the pregnancy irritated him, and he started saying he felt neglected, like my health and the baby's needs had pushed him aside. His mother, Mrs. Joyce, wasn't any better. One afternoon, she called, her voice icy cold. Helen, this child is not the right time. You should be focusing on supporting Jack, not dragging him into fatherhood, she said. I gripped the phone tighter, trying not to cry. It's not like I planned this on my own, Mrs. Joyce. This is our child, not just mine. There are options, you know, she replied sharply. You're choosing the most selfish one. Her words cut deep. As if that wasn't hard enough, Jack's behavior kept changing. His usual cologne was sometimes masked by another scent, a sweet perfume I didn't recognize. The first time I noticed it, I convinced myself it must have been from the dry cleaner. But then it happened again. And again. He started staying out late, muttering about catching up on work. Weekends, once our time together, were suddenly filled with business trips. I tried to push the doubts away, but it was becoming impossible to ignore. One Thursday, when Jack mentioned yet another trip, I made a decision. I reached out to Kenneth, an old classmate who is now a detective. We met at a quiet cafe, somewhere we wouldn't be overheard. Kenneth slid a folder across the table. I got what you asked for, Helen. Are you sure you want to see this? I nodded, unable to speak, and opened the folder. The photos were clear. There was Jack, with another woman. I recognized her immediately. She was a new hire at his office, someone he had mentioned in passing. I'm sorry, Helen, Kenneth said softly. There's video, too. It all adds up. My heart felt like it had dropped to my feet. Thanks, Kenneth. I needed to know, I whispered. I went home feeling numb, holding the folder as if it weighed a ton. When I unlocked the door, it swung open, and there stood Mrs. Joyce. Her face was tight with disapproval. I came to check on you, she said. Jack told me he's worried about you. I know about Jack, I said firmly, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. He's not on a business trip. He's with someone else. Mrs. Joyce scoffed, her response quick and cutting. You're driving him away. Always sick, always complaining, always needing something. What man wants that? That's no excuse for cheating, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I shot back, anger rising. And, do you think saying that will fix anything? Having his baby isn't about fixing things. How can you say no one in the family wants this child? This is our baby, not just mine. Her words hit me like a punch. Only you want this child, Helen. No one else, she said coldly. Get out, I said, my voice trembling. She threw her hands up and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was crushing. I sat on the couch, feeling hollow and numb. Every second dragged on, the pain in my chest matching the heaviness in my heart. But as I sat there, a decision settled over me. I had to face Jack and see the truth with my own eyes. Kenneth had already given me all the details I needed. The Grand View Hotel, room 786. His voice had been calm, but heavy with reluctance. My hands shook as I parked the car and walked into the hotel lobby. My stomach twisted into knots. I stepped into the elevator, my heart pounding louder with each passing floor. When the doors opened, the brightly lit hallway felt wrong, too cheerful for what I was about to face. Room 786 was just ahead. As I got closer, I heard laughter and the sound of glasses clinking. My hand trembled as I knocked. "Room service must be here with the champagne," a woman's carefree voice called out from inside. The seconds stretched endlessly before the door finally opened. Jack stood there, his face shifting from excitement to shock in an instant. "Helen? What? How did you find me?" "I know everything, Jack," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Before he could respond, I pushed past him and stepped into the room. The sight in front of me hit like a slap. There she was, his mistress, half-dressed and scrambling to cover herself as if modesty still mattered. Jack snapped out of his shock, and his face hardened. "Why are you here, Helen? To spy on me? To beg?" "No, Jack," I replied, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I'm here to see the truth." "The truth?" he scoffed, stepping closer.
Fine.
"Here it is. I'm not happy with you anymore. You're always so focused on yourself and this baby. You don't even think about me." His mistress, now somewhat dressed, smirked and added, "Maybe if you paid more attention to him, he wouldn't be with me." Her words cut deep, but it was Jack's nod in agreement that twisted the knife. "Yeah," he said coldly. "You should thank us. Once the baby's born, I'll finally be able to move on properly." The room spun around me. A sharp pain shot through my abdomen, so sudden and intense that I clutched my stomach, gasping. Everything else blurred as the reality of his betrayal hit me harder than I ever thought possible. I doubled over, gasping as shock and pain swirled through me, making it hard to breathe. "Jack, I think something's wrong," I whispered, desperate. "Please call an ambulance." Jack and his mistress exchanged a quick, dismissive glance. Then he shrugged. "You're probably just overreacting like always," he said coldly. They dressed quickly, stepping over me like I was just a piece of furniture in their way. The last thing I saw before the darkness took over was the door closing behind them. The sharp click of the lock echoed in the empty room. When I woke up, a maid's voice pulled me from the darkness. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" she asked, her face blurry as I blinked to clear my vision. The pain was still there, a dull ache that spread through my whole body. Where am I?" I asked, my voice hoarse and strange even to me. "You're still in the hotel room, dear. I found you on the floor. Don't worry, I'm calling an ambulance," she said gently. True to her word, moments later, I was being wheeled into the emergency room. The hospital's bright lights were harsh, and the air was filled with the chaotic hum of doctors and nurses rushing around me. Their voices blended together into a confusing noise, but all I could think about was Jack, his betrayal, his indifference, his absence. He never showed up at the hospital. Neither did his mother. Every call I made went unanswered. Their silence cut deeper than any wound. When the doctor finally came with the news, his words crushed what little strength I had left. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You've lost the baby." The grief hit me like a wave, heavy and suffocating. It was unbearable. The loss wasn't just mine. It felt like a cruel injustice, one that Jack, his mistress, and his mother had all contributed to. They had abandoned me when I needed them most. Bitterness and anger churned inside me, growing stronger with each passing moment. After what felt like an eternity, the hospital discharged me. I drove straight to our apartment, my chest heavy with pain and fury. Once inside, I grabbed Jack's things, his shirts, his socks, every trace of him, and started packing. Each item I touched felt like cutting another tie to the life I had shared with him. When I was done, I loaded everything into my car. I drove to Mrs. Joyce's house, my mind set. I didn't knock. I didn't care. I unloaded Jack's belongings right there in the driveway, letting them fall wherever they landed. Then I walked straight into her living room. Mrs. Joyce was sitting on the couch, her face blank, but her eyes told me she already knew why I was there. "Helen," she started, her tone tired. "You should just leave. Take what little dignity you have left." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and cold. Dignity? You're the last person to talk to me about dignity. I took a step closer, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. You raised a man who abandoned his wife and his child. You stood by and let this happen. Don't lecture me about dignity. You don't even know what it means. I stand by him, and he'll be better off without you, she said bluntly. Her words felt like a slap, but something inside me snapped. Do you even care that your grandchild is gone? That your son left me alone in a hotel room while I lost his child? Her eyes flickered, refusing to meet mine. It's a tough situation. It's done, Helen. I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. How do you feel as a mother knowing what happened? Knowing you stood by while your grandchild was lost? She didn't answer, just looked away, her composed mask cracking ever so slightly. I will see your son in court, I said firmly. You can tell him that. Without waiting for a reply, I turned and walked out, leaving her sitting there, alone with the weight of her choices. As I reached my car, the cool air hit my face, sharp and refreshing. My path had never been clearer. I would fight, not just for myself, but for the life that was lost and for the truth that needed to be told. Stepping into the courthouse, I could feel the weight of what was about to happen. Maybe it wasn't the eyes on me, but the significance of the moment pressing down. My best friend from college, Sophia, stood beside me. She had become a top lawyer, known for her sharp skills and fearless demeanor. When I told Sophia everything, she didn't hesitate. I've got this, Helen. And don't worry about the fees. This one's on me, she said, her voice fierce and reassuring. We sat at our table, everything neatly arranged, evidence, documents, every piece of truth I had. Across the room, Jack and his mistress looked smug, their confidence radiating arrogance that churned my stomach. The proceedings began, and their lawyer immediately went on the attack. He painted me as a woman broken by grief, grasping at straws and making up wild stories. The plaintiff has suffered immense emotional distress, yes, he said, his tone dripping with fake sympathy. But these accusations are baseless. There is no substantial evidence of any affair or wrongdoing by my client. When it was our turn, Sophia stood, her presence commanding the room. Your Honor, she began, her voice strong and steady, not only do we have substantial evidence, but we also have testimony to back every claim my client has made. First, Sophia presented the photos, clear, undeniable proof of the affair. The images were passed to the judge, then to the opposing counsel, whose confidence visibly wavered as they looked at them. Next, Sophia played the hotel video. The room fell silent as it showed me entering, followed later by Jack and his mistress laughing and hugging as they left, without a single look of concern. But that's not all, Sophia continued. She called the maid who found me in the hotel room to the stand. The maid's testimony was simple but powerful. I found her on the floor, unconscious. She was in pain and needed medical attention. It was clear she had been abandoned, the maid said, her voice steady but emotional. Each word felt like a nail in the coffin of Jack's defense. I found her unconscious on the floor. They were gone. She could have died, the maid said firmly. Jack's face turned pale, and his mistress fidgeted, her leg bouncing nervously under the table. When it was their turn to respond, Jack stood, his voice unsteady. This isn't what it looks like. We were just scared and confused. Sophia wasted no time. Scared? So you left your pregnant wife unconscious on the floor. She shot back, her tone cold as ice. The judge listened carefully to everything, the evidence, the testimonies, the arguments. After what felt like forever, he finally spoke. I find in favor of the plaintiff, Emily Bryan, he said firmly. The evidence of infidelity and negligence is overwhelming. I am ordering a 80/20 division of all marital assets in favor of the plaintiff, as well as financial compensation for the emotional distress caused by the defendants. Relief washed over me as the weight of his words sank in. As we left the courtroom, Sophia nudged me lightly with her elbow, a satisfied smile on her face. How's that for justice? I managed a small smile, feeling both relief and sadness. Thanks, Sophia. I couldn't have done this without you. Life slowly began to return to normal after the trial, though the pain lingered. Each day was a small step toward healing. With Sophia's encouragement and my own resolve, I started piecing my life back together. I found a small apartment and started fresh. Every piece of furniture I bought, every photo I hung on the walls, felt like a step away from the past. But one thing I couldn't escape was seeing Jack and his mistress at work. It was a constant reminder of the betrayal. One afternoon, as I sorted through legal briefs, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a while. It was Jack's mother, Mrs. Joyce. "Emily, could we meet?" "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaky. I hesitated, memories of her harsh words flashing through my mind. "Why should I meet you, Mrs. Joyce?" "It's about Jack and the company." "Please, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Her tone caught my attention, and curiosity got the better of me. Despite everything, the company was something I cared deeply about. I reluctantly agreed. We met at a quiet cafe, far from prying eyes. Mrs. Joyce looked worn out, her eyes red and tired, as if she had been crying. "Jack, he's not the boy I raised anymore," she started, avoiding my gaze. "He and that woman, they're planning to cheat the company, sell off assets, and force me out of my home." Her words hung heavily in the air, and I stared at her in disbelief. Before I could speak, she reached across the table, grabbing my hand tightly. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "You're the only one I can trust to stop this." Her plea felt genuine, but my reluctance was strong. "Mrs. Joyce, your family drama is no longer my concern," I said, pulling my hand away. "This isn't just family, Helen. It's the company. Your company, too. They're planning something big, and it could ruin everything," she said, her urgency cutting through my resistance. Her words struck a nerve. Could I turn my back on the company I had worked so hard for? I was still part of that company. It had taken a chance on me when I was fresh out of college, and many of my colleagues felt like family. "All right, I'll look into it," I finally agreed, more for the company's sake than for Mrs. Joyce. Back at work, I quietly reviewed records and contracts, following the trail of transactions tied to Jack and his mistress. It didn't take long to find the problem. The numbers didn't add up. Goods were being purchased at prices far above market value. With the evidence in hand, I headed to the director's office and laid the documents on his desk. He scanned them, his expression growing serious. "This is bad," he said, his tone flat. "Thank you, Emily. You may have just saved the company from a huge loss." I left his office feeling a mix of relief and satisfaction. As I passed Jack and his mistress in the hallway, their laughter grated on my nerves, but I knew I had done the right thing. My fresh start wasn't just about leaving the past behind. It was about standing up for what was right. The company acted quickly. Jack and his mistress were investigated, and the fraudulent activities were stopped. Their scheme had been on the verge of causing significant financial damage, but the company was saved in time. It wasn't about revenge for me, it was about protecting the workplace and the people who had supported me. In my new apartment, I continued to rebuild my life. Each new day brought a little more peace. The pain of betrayal and loss was still there, but it no longer controlled me. I was creating a new chapter, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Justice has a way of finding its path, no matter how complicated the road. After exposing Jack and his mistress, the company launched a full investigation. I was often called to testify, explaining the irregularities I had uncovered. The courtroom became familiar again, but this time I stood tall, confident in the truth and the overwhelming evidence. The legal battle was intense. Jack and his mistress faced the consequences of their actions head-on. The company pursued them relentlessly, filing a massive lawsuit for the potential losses they had caused. The verdict was clear: guilty. The court's decision barred them from ever holding senior positions again, a fitting end for their betrayal. Amid the chaos, my career took an unexpected but welcome turn. The company recognized my efforts and promoted me to a senior legal position, along with a generous raise. It felt like validation, not just for the work I had done, but for my determination to move forward. One quiet afternoon, as I sat in my new office, I reflected on how far I had come. The betrayal, The heartbreak and the loss were all still part of my story, but they no longer defined me. I smiled to myself, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I was organizing files in my new office, a bright space with a view of the city skyline, when my phone rang. The number on the screen was one I hadn't seen in a long time. It was Mrs. Joyce. "Helen, it's me," she said, her voice softer and more humble than I remembered. "I wanted to thank you for saving my home from being sold out from under me." Her gratitude sounded sincere, and despite everything, I felt a small pang of sympathy. "You're welcome. I just did what I thought was right," I replied. There was a pause, a moment of quiet before she added, "I was wrong about you, Helen. So very wrong. I used to think you didn't deserve my son, but I've come to realize it was he who didn't deserve you." Her words caught me off guard. They were honest and raw in a way I hadn't expected. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you might know," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "Could we meet?" she asked, her tone hopeful. "I'd like to apologize properly, face to face." I thought for a moment before answering. "All right, Mrs. Joyce. Let's meet." We chose a quiet cafe, neutral ground for what I knew would be a serious conversation. As I sat across from her, I noticed how much she had changed. The prideful air she once carried was gone, replaced by a subdued and reflective demeanor. "Helen, I'm sorry for everything," she began, her voice trembling. I was blinded by my own expectations, my own hopes for Jack. I nodded, letting her continue. "I know it wasn't easy for you, and I made it harder. But now I see you were doing what was right, not just for yourself, but for everyone involved." Her honesty took me by surprise, disarming the defenses I hadn't realized I was still holding. "Thank you for apologizing," I said. "It's taken a lot to get here, but I truly appreciate it." We talked for a while, sharing thoughts and feelings we had both buried for too long. By the end of our conversation, there was a sense of closure. While the past couldn't be undone, we found a mutual understanding and respect that had been missing before. As I left the cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Life had thrown many challenges my way, but I had faced them all and come out stronger. The future, once so uncertain, now seemed brighter and full of possibilities. Thank you so much for reading and being part of this journey. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories like this one. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to me.
I just had my dad's funeral, and now my stepmom thinks she can take over my life. She seems to believe that, with my dad gone, she can move into his mansion, change everything, redecorate, and do whatever she wants. But here's the thing, I've got news for her. I just spoke to my dad's lawyer about his will, and guess what? I think my stepmom is plotting to make me and my siblings homeless. And honestly, I'm not sure what to do about it. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. My little brother is 15, and my sister is only 12. 6 years ago, we lost our mom to cancer. It was a really hard time for all of us. After she passed, I had to step up and take care of my siblings because my dad was so broken. He could barely take care of himself, let alone us. That first year without mom was awful. Eventually, I convinced my dad to go to grief counseling and therapy, and it helped him a lot. He started to get better. He spent more time with us, drove us to and from school, helped us with homework, and even took us on vacations in the summer. Things were looking up. We still missed Mom, but life wasn't as bad as it had been. Then Catherine came into the picture. Catherine is a woman my dad met at a work event. At the time, it had been 4 years since Mom passed, so it didn't feel like he was moving on too quickly. My dad is a family guy and always told us he felt bad that we had to grow up without our mom or a mother figure. I never thought he was trying to replace her. My dad's not like that. But Catherine seemed to think she was stepping into Mom's role. When we first met her, she was super nice. She brought us little gifts and candy, probably to win us over. Dad asked us to be kind to her, saying he knew she could never replace Mom but that it would make him happy if we gave her a chance. So, we tried. At least we really tried. I should mention that my family is well off. My dad made a big name for himself in the corporate world. We live in what most people would call a mansion, go to private school, and have maids, a cook, and even property managers who take care of the house, and sometimes us, when Dad is busy. Catherine seemed to love these luxuries a little too much. Things started to change when Dad and Catherine got engaged. She moved in with us and began changing everything. She wanted to redesign several rooms, and in the process, she took down all the pictures of us with Mom. That upset me, so I moved the pictures into our bedrooms, but Catherine didn't like that either. My little sister didn't warm up to Catherine. Not because she hated her, but because she's always been shy. She doesn't like being around strangers and usually sticks close to me or Dad when we're out. If she came across Catherine alone, she'd run away or avoid her, not to be rude, but because she felt nervous. Catherine didn't handle this well. At first, she seemed okay with it, and I guess Dad told her that my sister takes time to warm up to people. But after about 5 months of living with us, Catherine started being mean to her. If my sister didn't respond when Catherine spoke to her, Catherine would yell at her and make her cry. She always did this when Dad wasn't around. My younger brother didn't like Catherine either, but he kept his feelings to himself because he didn't want to upset Dad. We did everything we could to protect my sister from Catherine. If my sister needed something from the kitchen but Catherine was there, one of us would go get it for her. At dinner, we'd let her sit between us and would steer the conversation if Catherine tried to ask her anything. Mom always taught me and my brother to look out for her, so we saw it as a way to honor Mom's memory. Things got even worse after Dad and Catherine got married. The wedding itself was unpleasant. We didn't want to be part of it, but Dad asked us to, so we went along with it for him. During the rehearsals, Catherine was nasty to us, saying we weren't walking properly or messing up the timing with the music. The reception was just as bad. It felt like things were falling apart. When Catherine was thanking everyone at the wedding, she said she was looking forward to being a mother to his children. That really upset us because she's not our mom. We were only being polite to her because Dad loves her, and we wanted him to be happy. After the wedding, Catherine got mad when we didn't call her Mom. Before they got married, we had agreed to call her to Miss Catherine, and she was fine with it. But now that she was Dad's wife, she said that wasn't good enough. Whenever we were out and she introduced us as her children, I always corrected her by saying we were her stepchildren. At PTA meetings or school events, she would introduce herself to our teachers and friends as our mom. I'd step in and explain that she was our stepmom. Most people already knew our mom had passed away, so they respected that and referred to Catherine as our stepmom. That made her really mad, and she'd go to Dad to complain about us. But Dad stood his ground. He told her she needed to stop trying to force us to accept her on her terms. He explained that losing our mom when we were young left a hole in our lives and that her memory would always be important to us. He said Catherine should try to find her own role in our lives instead of trying to replace Mom. For a while, she stopped insisting we call her Mom, but things still weren't good. I started hating being at home, especially when Dad wasn't there. His job kept him busy, but being stuck at home with Catherine was exhausting. I felt like I was always walking on eggshells around her. I dreaded weekends so much that I signed up for as many extra school activities as possible to have an excuse to stay out longer. I also made sure I was the first one home every day so my siblings wouldn't have to be alone with her. Catherine doesn't work. She spends her time shopping, hanging out with her friends, or just lounging around the house. She doesn't cook or clean because Dad has people to handle those things. We mostly took care of ourselves so she wouldn't have any reason to bother us. But every interaction with her felt forced and uncomfortable. It was draining just to be around her. Catherine's kindness was always fake, especially when Dad was around. But enough about that. Now, let me tell you about the hardest part. 5 weeks ago, I got a call that changed everything. Dad had a medical emergency and was rushed to the hospital. My siblings were pulled out of school, and we all went straight there. Catherine was already at the hospital with my dad's assistant, but the doctors were still working on him, so we had to wait. Unfortunately, Dad had suffered a massive heart attack, what they called a windowmaker. He didn't make it. My heart broke into pieces. The only parent we had left was gone. But I had to stay strong for my siblings. My younger sister took it the hardest. She refused to sleep alone and clung to me constantly. Catherine didn't involve us in the funeral planning at all. The only thing she listened to was my suggestion to delay the funeral so Dad's colleagues and friends from across the country and overseas could attend. The atmosphere in the house was worse than when Mom died, mostly because now we had to deal with Catherine. For the first 3 weeks after Dad passed, I didn't see much of her. But this past week, she's been moving around the house more, and she doesn't seem sad at all. What's worse, I overheard her on the phone talking about turning my sister's bedroom into a tea room. My sister's room has the best view in the house, overlooking the garden. I don't know what Catherine is planning, but it feels wrong. Dad isn't even buried yet, and she's already talking about changing things. It's disgusting. I haven't had a good night's sleep since I overheard her. The funeral is tomorrow, and some of Dad's family is in town. We don't know them well because they live far away, but I'm wondering if they might help us. I'm so worried that once the funeral is over, Catherine will kick me and my siblings out of the house. I don't even know if Dad had a will. He wasn't that old, so I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't make one. If there's no will, does that mean Catherine gets everything? I have no idea how inheritance works. I'm just a college freshman. I wasn't prepared for this kind of stress so early in life. If anyone has advice, I could really use it. If your dad didn't leave a will, his estate would likely be split evenly between you and your stepmom. Don't let her intimidate you. Stay close to your siblings, because people might try to take advantage of them if they inherit a significant amount of money. Worst case, if your dad did leave a will and gave the mansion to your stepmom, you'll need to reach out for help. Start with your family members, and if you have godparents, contact them right away. Godparents usually promise to help take care of their godchildren if something happens to the parents. Good luck. I'm rooting for you. Come. It sounds like your stepmom is just giving back the same energy she's been receiving. If you've been cold to her from the start, it's no surprise that she's acting distant now. If I were you, I'd try to get on her good side. If your dad left her the house, she has every right to ask you to leave. It doesn't seem like you have anywhere else to go, so be careful about how you handle things. Update 1. A few days ago, we had my dad's funeral. It was a huge service. People came from out of town and even overseas. I never realized how far my dad's influence had spread. I met so many people and they were all so kind. Many of them gave me and my siblings their business cards and told us to reach out if we ever needed anything. A lot of them shared stories about how Dad helped save their businesses or invested in their startups when nobody else believed in them. Apparently, Dad loved to talk about us because most of them already knew our names and the things we liked. They even brought us gifts, mostly snacks and candies from their countries. Catherine, however, kept interrupting every conversation. She'd ask if we were okay or if we needed anything. It was obvious she was putting on an act for everyone, pretending to be a caring stepmother when she really didn't care about us at all. After the burial, there was a gathering at the mansion. There was a ton of food and lots of people laughing and chatting, but my siblings and I weren't in the mood for any of it. We just buried our father, and celebrating felt wrong. We said hello to the guests but then spent most of the time in our rooms. I started looking through the business cards people gave us, wondering who might be able to help us if things go south. I was still really worried about the idea of having to leave the mansion, even though I had the business cards from my dad's friends. Then, hours after most of the guests had left, Catherine came to get us from our rooms and said we needed to have a family meeting. We went to the den, and she told us that she understood we were grieving since we had just buried our dad. But then she dropped a bombshell. She was giving us 5 months to move out of the mansion. I was shocked and asked if she was serious. My younger siblings are just kids, and I've only just started college. She really expected us to leave our childhood home and find a new place to live in 5 months? She said that there were plenty of people at the funeral who had offered to help us and that we should reach out to them. She also added that, since Dad was gone, she didn't want to deal with us anymore. I was so angry, but I didn't want to say something I might regret. I grabbed my siblings and we went back to our rooms. On the way, we ran into a guest who hadn't left yet. He apologized for surprising us and handed me his business card. He said he was my dad's lawyer and wanted to talk about matters related to Dad's estate. He told me to take some time to grieve and to call him when I was ready. I don't know if he talked to Catherine too, but I've been holding on to his card ever since. I can't help but worry that he might be working with Catherine, and if that's the case, he wouldn't be much help. I feel so lost right now. My younger siblings keep asking if we're really going to have to leave, and I don't know what to say to them. We met with my dad's lawyer the other day, and everything has changed. I finally called him and arranged a meeting at the house. He hadn't spoken to Catherine at all, only to us. When I told Catherine that Dad's lawyer was coming over, she seemed confused. Honestly, I didn't care what she thought. When he arrived, he opened his briefcase and asked if we were okay with Catherine being in the room while we talked. Catherine got really offended. She said she was Dad's widow and had the right to be involved in matters of his estate. The lawyer calmly replied that this specific discussion didn't involve her. Then he turned back to me and asked again if I was okay with her staying. I told the lawyer it was fine for Catherine to stay in the room, as long as he didn't go into too much detail. The short version of what he told us is that my dad never updated his will after marrying Catherine. This means she isn't included in it at all. She gets nothing. The will states that the mansion belongs to me and my siblings. It also says that if Dad passed away before we finished school, his money would be used for our education. Whatever was left, along with all his investments and dividends, would be held in a trust. Once we're grown and have stable jobs, the trust would be split evenly between the three of us. The lawyer said it might sound complicated, but my dad left enough money to make sure we'll be taken care of for a while. He also mentioned he'd talked to my dad's accountant, who managed his bank accounts and investments, to help explain everything more clearly. There's some paperwork we'll need to sign soon, but this meeting was just to let us know what's going on. After the lawyer explained everything, Catherine interrupted and asked, "What about me?" He calmly explained again that, since my dad didn't update his will to include her, she wasn't entitled to anything. He added that me and my siblings could choose to give her something if we wanted, but that would be entirely up to us. At that point, Catherine stormed out of the room. I can't even describe how relieved I felt hearing this news. After the lawyer left, my siblings and I decided to celebrate. We ordered our favorite food and started talking about what we want to do with the mansion. One thing I want is for my mom's pictures to go back up next to my dad's. They never should have been taken down in the first place. As for Catherine, I'm torn. Part of me wants to give her a taste of her own medicine by threatening to kick her out, just like she tried to do to us. But I don't want to stoop to her level. I don't hate her as much as she seems to hate us. She's been sulking in her room ever since the lawyer left. I don't even know how to handle things if she starts yelling or causing trouble. If that happens, I might actually lose my temper. Update 3. Hey, everyone. It's been about 3 months since my last update. Things have been pretty weird, and I've been busy trying to figure everything out while taking care of my siblings. But now, I'm seriously considering kicking Catherine out of the house. At first, I didn't care much about Catherine staying because I thought she'd leave on her own eventually. But she's made me so angry. About 3 to 4 weeks after the lawyer came to meet us, she served us with court papers. She was trying to get an injunction to stop us from kicking her out of the house. This after she threatened to kick us out. I couldn't believe how bold she was. Not only that, but she was also trying to claim part of our inheritance since Dad didn't leave her anything. Right after she handed me the papers, I called my dad's lawyer and told him what was going on. He told me to bring the papers to his office right away. I didn't waste any time. I was at his building even before he got to work because I wanted this dealt with quickly. When he read through the papers, he told me not to worry. He said no reasonable judge would overturn a clear will just to make a spouse happy. I asked him what I should do next, and he told me to go home and wait for updates. Even though he reassured me, I felt uneasy at home. Sometimes I'd overhear Catherine talking about how she was going to own the mansion once she got rid of us. It gave me chills. Sure enough, about a month later, the lawyer told me the case had been thrown out. The judge ruled that my dad's will was clear and valid, and the court couldn't overturn his final wishes. The lawyer explained that wills sometimes exclude spouses or even children, so what Catherine was asking for wasn't just unreasonable, it was ridiculous. She wanted the mansion, half the money, and half the investments. On top of that, she claimed in the documents that she helped raise his 3 children. She was only married to him for 3 years, a tiny fraction of our lives. Our real mom raised us for much longer, even though she's been gone for 8 years. While I'm relieved this is over, I've realized it's a bad idea to let Catherine stay in the house after everything she's done. At first, I felt a little sorry for her, but now I know she'll just keep causing trouble for me and my siblings. I went back to my dad's lawyer to ask what we could do. He told me I could go to court and request an eviction notice since we own the house outright. However, he also suggested I ask Catherine to leave politely first. That way, if she refuses, it'll look better to the judge. If I'm being honest, I didn't even want to talk to Catherine, but I decided to give it a try. Wish me luck. Well, it's finally over, and I'm happy to share that Catherine is gone. After everything she's done, I don't feel sorry for her anymore. Here's what happened. Remember how my dad's lawyer suggested I ask her nicely to leave? I did exactly that. I approached her calmly and asked if we could talk. When we sat down, I told her I understood that my dad loved her very much and that she must be sad he's gone. But I also told her I didn't appreciate how she treated me and my siblings, especially right after his funeral. I reminded her that we had just buried Dad, and she gave us 5 months to leave the only home we'd ever known. Then, she tried to take the house from us, even though Dad clearly wanted us to have it. I told her it felt like she was willing to do anything to get what she wanted, and that her presence in the mansion made it feel unsafe for me and my siblings. Finally, I gave her 110 days to move out. She completely flipped out. She yelled that if Dad were alive, he'd never treat her this way and that if we were uncomfortable, we should leave. She insisted that, as Dad's widow, she had every right to stay in the mansion. At that point I was done. I calmly said, okay, went to my room and called the lawyer. I told him I'd tried asking nicely, but she clearly wasn't willing to leave. I gave him the go-ahead to file the eviction notice. Catherine was acting like she was entitled to things that didn't belong to her, and it was time for her to go. Sure enough, about a month later, she was served with the eviction notice. She tried to fight it, but the court ruled in our favor. The house was legally and irrevocably ours, and we were well within our rights to ask her to leave. We didn't owe her anything. On the day she was supposed to move out, I made sure I had backup, just in case she tried anything sneaky. But in the end, she packed her things and left. The sigh of relief I let out when she was finally gone, I can't even describe it. Since then, things have been so much better. My younger sister seems happier and has started exploring the house more. I know it's going to be hard without our parents, but I'm just glad we can finally move on from all this drama and focus on healing. Top comment 1. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you were able to get that woman out of your life. The way she treated you and your siblings, especially after everything you've been through, was horrible. She really made things worse when you were already grieving. Honestly, good for your dad for not including her in the will. I hope you and your siblings can start to heal and grow after all this. I've been through a lot of loss recently too, and I just want you to know that you'll be okay. Things will feel different and there will be tough days, but you'll get through it. Comment 2. This whole situation made me feel uncomfortable. I know your stepmother treated you badly, but you also said she made your dad happy. I think she deserved something for that. It feels strange that your dad didn't include her in the will at all. Did he even care for her, or was she just someone to fill the emptiness after your mom passed away? You might not feel bad for her, but I do. Imagine being in her shoes. She became his wife, and then he died, leaving her with nothing. That must be devastating. Maybe she didn't handle it the right way, but I think a little compassion wouldn't hurt. Story opinion. Honestly, Catherine's behavior was completely out of line. Imagine marrying someone, knowing they have kids who rely on them, and then trying to take everything for yourself after they pass away. It's selfish and cruel. She seemed manipulative and toxic, and she showed no respect for what her stepkids were going through. I think OP handled the situation well. Going to court and getting the eviction notice was the right move. Catherine clearly wasn't going to leave on her own, and she didn't deserve to stay in a house that wasn't hers. Stories like this are sadly common when it comes to inheritances, wills, and family disputes. It's always messy when money and emotions are involved, especially with stepfamilies and unexpected deaths. What do you think about this situation? Have you ever dealt with something similar? Share your insights in the comments below. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Thank you for watching today's video. My name is Revenge Online, and I share and animate stories every day. If you want to join in on these daily drama-filled stories, just hit that subscribe button right there. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you tomorrow. And remember, being kind is always cool. See you soon.
My earliest memories are of my dad's warm smile and the cozy feeling of our small rented apartment. My name is Haley, and until I turned 14, my life was simple in the best way possible. My dad, Mark, had a way of turning ordinary moments into adventures. Even though we lived in a modest apartment, he transformed our tiny balcony into a magical garden and made rainy weekends exciting by building forts in the living room. My mom, Grace, was different. She was quieter and often dreamed of having a bigger house and a more glamorous life. But back then, their differences seemed to balance out perfectly. Mom would often ask me, "Haley, sweetie, do you want to spend the weekend at Grandpa's?" I'd always jump at the chance. Not because I didn't want to be at home, but because Grandpa Jack's house felt like a second home to me. Grandpa's place was an old two-story Victorian house with creaky wooden floors and endless corners to explore. When I'd arrive, he'd greet me with a warm smile and say, "Your mother needs some alone time with your father, and I need my time with my favorite granddaughter." I was more observant than most adults realized. I understood that Mom needed her space and that she and Dad had their own bond to maintain. It didn't bother me. If anything, it made me feel grown up. Besides, my weekends with Grandpa were special. He'd tell me stories about Dad's childhood, teach me about saving money — he was a retired bank manager — and make the most delicious pancakes. One morning, while we were having breakfast on his porch, Grandpa said, "Your mom dreams of having a house like this one. But do you know what's more important than a big house? A home filled with love." I nodded, even though I was young, because I understood what he meant. Our apartment might have been small, but it was full of love. Dad worked at an insurance company and would come home each evening with so much energy. He'd swing me around in his arms and smother Mom with kisses until she couldn't help but laugh. Moments like those made our little apartment feel huge, like nothing else mattered. But life has a way of surprising you, changing everything when you least expect it. I was 14 when Dad started losing weight fast. At first, he joked about it, saying he was finally getting fit, but his eyes told a different story. He started going to the doctor more often, and Mom looked more worried every day. "It's just a phase," Dad would say, ruffling my hair with a weak smile. "I'll be back to my old self soon." But he wasn't. The truth hit us hard. He had aggressive pancreatic cancer. It spread through him like wildfire, and in just a few months, my strong, lively dad became a shadow of who he used to be. I watched helplessly as Mom tried to keep everything together, but I could see she was breaking inside. I'll never forget the last conversation I had with Dad. He was lying in his hospital bed, barely strong enough to hold my hand. "Take care of your mom for me, princess," he whispered. "And let Grandpa guide you. He's wiser than all of us put together." The year after Dad passed felt like living in a fog. Mom fell into a deep depression and could hardly look at me. I guess I reminded her too much of him. Thankfully, Grandpa Jack became my safe place. He was my rock during the storm our lives had become. Living with Grandpa wasn't just temporary anymore. It became my new normal. Every morning, I woke up in Dad's old room, surrounded by his childhood photos and trophies. Grandpa made sure I stayed on top of school, helped me with homework, and tried his best to fill the gap left by both my parents, one who was gone and the other lost in grief. Mom would call sometimes, but her voice always sounded far away, like she wasn't really there. Her visits were even rarer, just quick stops where she'd barely look at me before leaving again. I eventually stopped hoping for more. Then, exactly 1 year and 3 months after Dad passed, everything changed. Mom showed up at Grandpa's door one sunny Saturday morning, and I almost didn't recognize her. She wasn't the sad, grieving widow anymore. She was wearing a bright yellow dress, had a new haircut, and her face was glowing with excitement. "Haley, sweetie, pack your things, you're coming home," she announced, practically bouncing on her heels like a teenager. I looked at Grandpa, confused, and he seemed just as surprised as I was. The drive back to our apartment was filled with Mom's cheerful talk about random things. It felt like I was sitting next to a stranger who only looked like my mom. But the real shock hit me when we stepped into the apartment. In our small living room stood a tall man and a girl who looked about 4 years younger than me. They both smiled nervously as Mom practically skipped over to them. "Haley, meet Tyler and his daughter Alyssa," Mom said, beaming as she grabbed Tyler's arm. "Tyler is my fiancé, and Alyssa will be your new sister. We're getting married soon." The room started spinning.
What?
"When did this happen?" "Oh, we've been dating for a while now," Mom said, waving her hand like it was no big deal. "I didn't tell anyone because, people can get jealous and judgmental. It was better to keep it private." I stumbled to my old room, barely noticing that it had been completely redecorated. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called Grandpa. He picked up right away. "Mom has a fiancé," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's getting married and she didn't tell anyone. There's a man here and his daughter." Grandpa arrived within 30 minutes. From my room, I could hear him confronting Mom. "Grace, how could you do this without telling anyone? Without telling your own daughters?" "Dad, I'm happy for the first time in forever," Mom said defensively. "I've decided to move on, to live again. Mark wouldn't want me to stay stuck in sadness forever." There was a long silence before Grandpa finally replied, his voice heavy. "I hope you'll be happy, Grace. Just don't forget you have a daughter who needs you too." The 4 months leading up to the wedding felt like living in a strange, twisted world. Our small apartment, which already felt tight with just the 2 of us, now felt even more crowded with 5 people. But the worst part wasn't the lack of space. It was watching Alyssa, my soon-to-be stepsister, take over my mom's attention. "Mom, can you help me with my hair?" Alyssa would ask sweetly, and Mom would drop whatever she was doing, even if she was in the middle of talking to me. The way Alyssa said "Mom" made my skin crawl, especially since she had only known her for a few months. But Mom didn't seem to notice. She was completely focused on Alyssa. When Alyssa mentioned she liked ballet, Mom signed her up for private lessons right away, something she had never done for me. For years, I had begged for things like a new phone or redecorating my room, but Mom always said we couldn't afford it. Yet when Alyssa complained about her old phone being slow, Mom bought her the latest iPhone. When Alyssa decided she didn't like how our shared bedroom looked, Mom took her shopping and spent hundreds on new bedding, curtains, and decorations. "Your sister needs to feel welcome here," Mom would say whenever I brought up how unfair it felt. "Stepsister," I'd correct her. "And I need to feel welcome too." She would just shake her head and walk away. The wedding was a small event at a local venue, but Mom looked radiant and happy. I stood there in my bridesmaid dress, watching as she fussed over Alyssa's hair and makeup. She barely glanced my way. During the ceremony and reception, Mom held Alyssa's hand and introduced her to everyone as my beautiful daughter. It felt like I was invisible, more like a server than part of the family. Grandpa gave Mom and Tyler a $10,000 check as a wedding gift, which was generous by any measure. But I overheard Mom cornering him near the restrooms, clearly unhappy. "Really, Dad? A check?" she hissed, her face red from champagne and anger. "I was counting on you giving us your house. We're a proper family now, and we need the space. That apartment is too small for 5 people." Grandpa stayed calm, though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Grace, you're rushing into everything. First this quick engagement, now this. That house isn't just property to hand over on a whim. Besides, it's where Haley spends half her time." "Oh, so now you're playing favorites?" Mom snapped. "No," Grandpa said firmly. "I'm being practical. And maybe you should be too." I slipped away before they could notice me, but their words stuck with me. Mom had changed so much that I barely recognized her anymore. She had created this picture-perfect family in her mind, with Alyssa as the golden child and Tyler as the perfect husband. It felt like there wasn't any room left for me. So, I started spending more time at Grandpa's house. At least there, I didn't have to pretend to be happy about being pushed aside. 5 years have passed since then, and I'm about to graduate high school. Living in that apartment has been like a lesson in avoiding conflict. I've learned to stay quiet, take up as little space as possible, and spend most of my time either in my room or at Grandpa's. One evening, during one of our weekly family dinners, a ritual that felt more like pretending we were a happy family, I realized just how far things had changed. I decided it was time to share my plans for the future. I've been accepted to State University, I announced, trying to keep my voice steady. I want to study finance and business management. The room went completely silent. Mom put down her fork, exchanged a look with Tyler, and cleared her throat. Actually, Haley, she said, I think it might be better if you started working after graduation. College isn't necessary for everyone. I stared at her, confused. What are you talking about? Dad set up a college fund for me before he died. He always wanted me to go to college. Mom shifted uncomfortably in her chair. About that fund, Tyler and I have been talking, and we think it would be better to save that money for Alyssa's education. She's so talented, top of her class and everything. She'll need a good university education to reach her full potential. Tyler nodded in agreement. Alyssa has shown remarkable promise in her studies. It would be the right thing to do, Haley. You could work for a few years, save up, and then go to college if you still wanna. It felt like the air had been knocked out of me. The college fund, the last gift my father had arranged for me, they wanted to take that too. That money is mine, I said, my voice trembling with anger. Dad left it specifically for my education. You can't just give it to Alyssa. Don't be selfish, Haley, Mom said, her eyes filling with tears. Alyssa is your sister's stepsister, I interrupted, standing up so fast my chair tipped over. And that money is the last thing I have from Dad. You've given her everything else, my room, your attention, your love, but you can't have this. I won't let you take it. How dare you? Mom said, now crying openly, but I could see through her tears. After everything we've done for you? Alyssa needs this. Alyssa needs? I shouted. What about what I need? What about what Dad wanted for me? The argument ended with slamming doors and tears, mostly Mom's, as she wailed about how selfish I was. After that night, the apartment became even more unbearable. No one spoke to me unless they had to. Alyssa smirked whenever she walked past me, and Tyler wouldn't even look in my direction. On graduation day, I wasn't surprised to see only Grandpa in the audience. He cheered so loudly when they called my name that it almost made up for the absence of anyone else. His proud smile meant more to me than anything my so-called new family could have offered. That evening, I packed up everything I owned. I packed everything I owned into 3 cardboard boxes and an old suitcase. Grandpa helped me load them into his car. Your room is always ready for you, sweetheart, he said as we drove away. Always has been, always will be. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me there. College became my escape. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make Dad and Grandpa proud. I loved my business and finance classes and worked harder than I ever had before. I started excelling in ways I knew would have made Dad smile. Every evening, I'd call Grandpa to share what I was learning. Tell me about derivatives again, he'd say, even though he probably knew more about finance than my professors. I love hearing you explain it. But as the years went on, I noticed small changes in Grandpa's voice during our calls. He got tired more easily, and his usual sharp wit sometimes seemed dulled. During my visits home, I'd see him wince when he stood up or rub his chest when he thought I wasn't watching. It's just age catching up with me, he'd say when I asked. Nothing to worry about, sweetheart. But I did worry. I started calling him twice a day instead of once, and I drove home every weekend I could, not just during holidays. We'd sit in his kitchen, drinking tea and talking about anything and everything, just like we always had. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me with so much love that it made my throat tighten. Then, in the middle of my final semester, Mom called. It was the first time she'd reached out in 5 years. At first, I thought about ignoring it, but something made me pick up. Grandpa died last night, she said, her voice flat and emotionless. The funeral is on Saturday at 3 p.m. at New York Funeral Home. The phone slipped from my hand. I don't remember much of what happened after that, except my roommate finding me curled up on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Saturday came too quickly, and not quickly enough. The funeral home was exactly the kind of place Grandpa would have liked, simple but elegant, with big windows letting in lots of natural light. I arrived early, wearing a black dress that felt too tight and uncomfortable. Everything felt wrong because Grandpa wasn't there to make it right. I expected to see Mom and her family, but they weren't there. Instead, I found Mr. Christian, Grandpa's friend from his banking days, organizing the service. "They're running a bit late," he said when I asked. "Your mother called to let me know." The service was beautiful, filled with people who had known and loved Grandpa. They shared stories about his kindness, his honesty, and his humor. I sat alone in the front row, overwhelmed by grief. Halfway through the service, I heard the back door creak open. Mom walked in with Tyler and Alyssa, all dressed in perfectly coordinated black outfits. They sat in the far back, and Mom didn't even look my way. Her face held an expression of polite sadness, but her eyes were scanning the room, assessing and calculating. I turned back to face the front, my tears now burning with not just grief but anger. Even here, even now, she couldn't acknowledge me. She couldn't put aside her spite, not even for one day, to properly mourn her own father. After the service, I drove to Grandpa's house, my home for the past 5 years. But when I arrived, I froze at the sight in front of me. Scattered across the lawn were garbage bags filled with my belongings, my clothes, books, photo albums, everything from my room, thrown out like trash. Some bags had split open, and my things were spilling onto the grass. With trembling hands, I tried my key in the front door, but it wouldn't turn. The lock had been changed. I was still standing there, stunned and helpless, when the door opened. Mom stood in the doorway, still wearing her black funeral dress. But her face was no longer sad. It was triumphant. "Oh, good. You're here to collect your things," she said, as if she were doing me a favor. "This is my house now. Dad's gone, and as his only child, I'm the rightful heir. I've already changed the locks. We're moving in tonight." I stared at her, unable to believe the cruelty of her words. "You couldn't even wait until after the funeral?" I said, my voice shaking. "These are my things. This was my home." "No," she said sharply, cutting me off. "This is my home now. Take your stuff quickly, or it's going in the dumpster." "I need to clear the space for Alyssa's things," Mom said with a cold smile. "She's getting your old room, by the way. She's always wanted a bigger bedroom." I felt numb as I gathered my belongings, shoving them back into the torn bags and trying to pick up the scattered photos of Dad and Grandpa from the grass. Mom stood in the doorway the whole time, watching me like a security guard, as if I might steal something. The drive back to my college dorm was a blur of tears and disbelief. My roommate didn't ask any questions when she saw me. She just helped me carry everything inside. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a law firm. "Miss Johnson, this is Mr. Matthew from Matthew and Partners Law Firm. I'm your grandfather's notary. We need you to come in for the reading of his will. Would Saturday at 11 a.m. work for you?" I agreed, even though I didn't see the point. Mom had made it very clear she was inheriting everything. When I arrived at the notary's office on Saturday, Mom, Tyler, and Alyssa were already there. They sat in leather chairs like they owned the place. Alyssa was examining her nails, while Tyler scrolled through his phone. Mom's eyes narrowed when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" she said loudly, making sure everyone in the room could hear. "You're not needed for this. We're handling family business." Mr. Matthew adjusted his glasses and started reading the will. Jack Mark Mitchell, being of sound mind and body, declare this to be my last will and testament. He began with the usual formalities, and I saw Mom smiling, confident. But that smile froze when he continued. "To my beloved granddaughter, Haley Johnson, I leave my house at 143 Collier Street, along with all its contents, and my entire savings account containing $550,000. The room went completely silent. Then Mom's voice cut through like a knife. "What? This can't be right," she shouted, grabbing the document from Mr. Matthew. Her eyes scanned it frantically. "Where's my part? I'm his daughter." Mr. Matthew calmly took the will back. "Mrs. Waters, Your father's wishes are very clear. He leaves everything to Miss Haley Johnson. There is no provision for you in the will. This is impossible. Mom's face turned red with rage. She manipulated him. She turned him against me. I'll sue. I'll contest this will. Mom shouted. The will is ironclad, Mr. Matthew replied calmly. Your father had it properly witnessed and notarized 7 months ago. He was of completely sound mind, as confirmed by his doctor. Any attempt to contest it would be futile and very expensive. Mom's strategy shifted instantly. The anger in her eyes turned into tears, and her tone became sweet as honey. Haley, sweetie, please, she said, her voice trembling. We've already given up our apartment. We moved everything out yesterday. We have nowhere to go. You can't just throw us out on the street. We're family. I stood up, holding the folder Mr. Matthew had just handed me. Inside were the deed to the house, the ownership transfer documents, and all the legal paperwork proving I now own the property. Family? I asked quietly, meeting her tearful gaze. Like how you threw all my things onto the lawn before Grandpa was even in his grave. Like how you tried to steal my college fund. Like how you've treated me for the past 5 years. That was different. She started, but I cut her off. This is your problem, not mine. I suggest you start looking for a new apartment, I said firmly, turning to leave. I drove straight to Grandpa's house, my house now, but when I tried the key, it didn't work. Taking out my phone, I called a locksmith and explained the situation. When he arrived, I showed him the notarized documents. I'm the legal owner of this house, I told him, holding up the paperwork. I need you to open these locks and then change them. I want to be the only one with the keys. As the locksmith worked, I went through the house, gathering everything that belonged to Mom, Tyler, and Alyssa. I packed up their clothes, toiletries, and even the posters Alyssa had already stuck on my old bedroom walls. I loaded it all into garbage bags, just like they had done with my belongings days ago. When the locksmith handed me the new keys, I dragged all their bags onto the front porch and arranged them neatly. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their things now sat where mine had been, scattered on the lawn just days before. As the sun began to set, I heard the familiar sound of Mom's car pulling into the driveway. Standing by the living room window, Grandpa's favorite spot for reading the morning paper, I watched as their reactions unfolded exactly as I expected. What is this? Mom's voice shrieked loud enough to be heard through the closed windows. Our things. All our things are outside. I opened the door, but stood firmly in the doorway as they approached. Mom's face was bright red with anger. Tyler looked like he had swallowed something bitter, and Alyssa was already crying her dramatic tears. How dare you? Mom shouted as she stormed up the porch steps. We live here now. You can't do this to us. Actually, I can, I said calmly. This is my house now, legally and rightfully. You need to take your things and leave. We have nowhere to go. Alyssa cried. You should have thought about that before giving up your apartment, I replied coolly. Not my problem. Mom tried to push past me into the house, but I didn't move. Move, Haley. This is ridiculous. This is my father's house. No, I said firmly. It's my house now. If you don't leave with your belongings immediately, I'll call the police and report you for trespassing. And if you don't take your bags, they'll go straight to the dumpster. I pulled out my phone. Your choice, Mom. Just like you gave me a choice when you threw my things on the lawn. The next few minutes were filled with yelling and threats as they gathered their bags. Mom switched between crying and shouting about how unfair it all was, while Alyssa kept muttering that I'd regret this. Tyler grumbled under his breath about contesting the will. When they finally loaded the last bag into their car, Mom turned to me one last time. You're no daughter of mine. Your father would be ashamed of you. I gave her a sad smile.
No, Mom.
Dad would be proud that I finally stood up for myself.
Goodbye.
I watched them drive away, their car disappearing around the corner. That was 7 months ago. I'm in my final semester now, about to graduate with honors. The house is being rented to a lovely young family, and their monthly rent is helping me build my savings, just as Grandpa would have wanted. On the first night after they left, I found a letter in Grandpa's study safe. My dearest Haley, it began. If you're reading this, it means you've already dealt with your mother's reaction to my will. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I knew Grace too well. I knew what she would try to do. You have your father's integrity and my business sense, Grandpa had written. Use them both wisely. The house is yours to do with as you wish, but promise me you'll keep the family photos in the attic. Some memories are worth keeping, even the painful ones. I kept that promise, along with the others I made to both Grandpa and Dad. Now I'm focusing on my future, letting go of the past, but holding on to the lessons it taught me. Sometimes, family isn't the people you're born to, it's the ones who believe in you, protect you, and help you grow. Mom, Tyler, and Alyssa still live somewhere in the city. I've heard they found a new apartment eventually. They've tried to reach out a few times, usually when they need something, but I don't respond. Some chapters of our lives are better left closed. My name is Maud, and I worked in the marketing department at Carson and Associates. That's where I met Jack. He worked in sales just down the hall from my office. It all started in a simple, innocent way. We kept running into each other in the office kitchen during lunch breaks. I'd be heating up my boring microwave meals, while he'd pull out these neatly packed bento boxes, filled with colorful food. "Those look way better than my frozen dinners," I said one day, eyeing his lunch. He grinned and held out an extra pair of chopsticks. "Want to try?" My mom taught me how to cook, but I think she regrets it now. I stopped calling her for recipes pretty quickly. That small moment led to more shared lunches. Soon, it became our daily routine. We'd sit at the little table by the window, sharing stories about our lives. I told him about growing up with my practical, no-nonsense parents in the suburbs and how my grandma had given me my apartment before she passed away. Jack shared bits about his work, hobbies, and dreams. But he rarely mentioned his family. After 4 months of these lunch dates, he finally asked me out for a proper dinner. "Let's go somewhere tonight. Somewhere that doesn't involve a microwave or plastic cutlery," he said with a playful smile. I said yes, and that's how our real story began. We dated for a year, and it was amazing. Jack was funny, thoughtful, and kind. When he suggested we move in together, it felt like the most natural thing to do. My apartment was spacious, and we were spending most nights together anyway. Everything was perfect, except for one thing. I'd never met his family. He'd met mine just a few months after we started dating. But every time I brought up meeting his family, Jack would dodge the question or give vague excuses. One evening, after we'd been living together for a few months, I couldn't keep quiet about it anymore. We were curled up on the couch, watching a movie. I paused it and turned to face him. "Jack, why haven't I met your family yet? Are you ashamed of me or something?" He let out a long sigh and ran his hands through his dark hair. "God, no, Britt," he said, his voice soft but heavy. "I'm not ashamed of you," Jack said quietly. "I'm ashamed of them." I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Come on, they can't be that bad." "They are," he said, his voice completely serious. "They're different. They think everything is a joke. And I mean everything. Even serious situations, important moments, they turn it all into some cruel prank." I raised my eyebrows, still unsure if he was messing with me. "What do you mean? Like what kind of pranks? You want examples?" "Fine." He sat up straighter, his jaw tightening. "When I was in high school, I brought my first girlfriend over for dinner. My mom served spaghetti, but she replaced the noodles with rubber worms. My girlfriend screamed, threw up at the table, and ran out. Everyone thought it was hilarious, except me and her. She never talked to me again." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. "Or how about this?" he continued, his voice bitter. "I had a big presentation in middle school, something I worked really hard on. My brother swapped my notebook with one that looked identical, but it was filled with pornographic drawings. I didn't notice until I opened it in front of the entire class. I got suspended for 3 weeks. He shook his head, and I could see the anger in his eyes as he kept sharing more stories. Each one was worse than the last. By the time he finished, I understood why he was so reluctant to introduce me to his family. But nothing could have prepared me for what was coming. Jack proposed to me on a quiet Thursday morning. It wasn't anything fancy, just the two of us in the kitchen making breakfast. I was flipping pancakes when he pulled out a ring and said, "I can't imagine my life without you, Britt. Will you marry me?" Of course, I said yes. I was over the moon. But then, he said the words I'd been dreading. "I guess it's time for you to meet my family." The Taylor family home was a charming two-story colonial in the suburbs. It looked warm and inviting, with flowers blooming along the walkway. Mrs. Taylor opened the door before we even made it to the porch. She was a petite woman with Jack's warm brown eyes and a wide smile. Behind her stood Mr. Taylor, tall and serious-looking, and next to him was Etienne, Jack's older brother. "Oh, finally," Mrs. Taylor exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. "We've been dying to meet the woman who stole Jack's heart." Their warmth caught me off guard. The initial conversation was surprisingly normal. We sat in their cozy living room, chatting about my job, my family, and how Jack and I met. They even made a few lighthearted jokes that actually made me laugh. I started to relax, thinking maybe Jack had exaggerated about their pranks. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. I noticed Jack watching his family, like someone waiting for a disaster to happen. He looked tense, but I thought he was just being overly cautious. "I'll get us some tea," Mrs. Taylor said cheerfully. "Maud dear, how do you take yours?" "Just a splash of milk, please," I replied with a smile. She came back with the tea tray, and everyone continued chatting pleasantly. I took a big sip of my tea, and immediately regretted it. My mouth felt like it had been hit with fire. The tea was loaded with salt and pepper, so much that it burned my throat. I spat it back into the cup, coughing uncontrollably as tears streamed down my face. The Taylors burst out laughing. "Welcome to the family," Etienne shouted, grinning. "Better get used to it," Mr. Taylor added, wiping away tears of laughter. "This is how we show love here. We like our little jokes." I couldn't take it. I ran to the kitchen, desperate for water. I found a glass, filled it with ice water, and gulped it down, trying to cool the burning in my throat. My nose was running, my makeup was ruined, and I could feel tears streaking down my cheeks. From the living room, I heard Jack whisper angrily, "What is wrong with you people? This isn't funny. She's going to be my wife." "Oh, lighten up," Etienne replied casually. "It's just a joke." When I walked back into the living room, my face a mess of running mascara and smudged foundation, they took one look at me and started laughing again. "Look, she looks like a panda," Etienne said, pointing at me and doubling over with laughter. That was it. Jack jumped to his feet, his face red with anger. "You're all jerks," he shouted. "This is exactly why I didn't want to bring her here." He grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the door. In the car, Jack kept apologizing over and over. I just hugged him, my face still burning from the pepper and the humiliation. As we drove home, I realized Jack hadn't been exaggerating about his family at all. He'd been warning me. Planning a wedding is stressful enough without worrying about your future in-laws turning it into a circus of practical jokes. For weeks, Jack and I debated whether to invite his family to the wedding at all. "We have to invite them," Jack finally said one night while we were addressing invitations. "They're still my parents, and no matter how much I hate their pranks, I'd regret not having them there," Jack said, his voice heavy. The next day, he called them, putting the phone on speaker, so I could hear. "Mom, Dad, listen carefully," he said firmly. "You can come to the wedding, but I need your word, no pranks. This is the most important day of our lives, not some kind of circus." "Of course, sweetheart," his mom chirped. "We'll behave, I promise." The wedding day started perfectly. The ceremony was beautiful, and the reception was going smoothly. Jack's family was actually behaving themselves, though I noticed Jack keeping a close eye on them. Then it was time to cut the cake. Our cake was stunning, 4 tiers of white fondant, with delicate sugar flowers cascading down the sides. But as we approached it, something felt off. There were candles on the cake, lit candles. That wasn't part of the plan. I turned to Jack to say something, but before I could, there was a loud pop, then another and another. The cake exploded. Chunks of cake and frosting flew everywhere, most of it landing on me and completely ruining my wedding dress. For a moment, there was total silence. Then I heard it, The familiar sound of the tailor's laughter. They were doubled over, pointing and gasping for air. "Your face," Etienne managed to say between fits of laughter. "Oh my God, your face." I stood there, cake dripping from my dress, and burst into tears. Through my blurred vision, I saw Jack's face turn a deep shade of purple. He looked furious. "Get out," he roared at his family. "Get out of my wedding right now." "You're overreacting," his mom said, looking confused. "Everyone loves a good wedding prank." Jack didn't even respond. He waved over the security team we'd hired, thank goodness for that decision, and had them escort his family out of the venue. My mom rushed over with napkins, trying to wipe the frosting off my face. My bridesmaids surrounded me protectively, their faces full of concern. Even Jack's Aunt Lori, who I had just met that day, came over to help, shooting disgusted looks at her departing relatives. "I can't believe they're my brother's family," Aunt Lori muttered as she helped me wipe cake from my hair. "This is a wedding, for heaven's sake, not some college frat party." Somehow, we managed to salvage the rest of the reception. Our friends and my family rallied around us, turning the situation into a group joke rather than leaving me as the target. Someone even found a backup cake. Apparently, our wedding planner had dealt with difficult families before. After I changed into my backup dress, we managed to take a few decent pictures and enjoyed the rest of the night. Life calmed down after the wedding disaster. Jack and I settled into a peaceful routine in my grandmother's old apartment, far away from his family's chaos. We turned the spare bedroom into a home office, planning to use it that way for a while before maybe turning it into a nursery. But plans have a way of changing. Just over a year after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. When I told Jack, he was over the moon, spinning me around our tiny kitchen, though he quickly set me down when I started feeling queasy. We decided to keep the news to ourselves for the first few months, telling only my parents. But somehow word got out. When I was 8 months along, Jack's phone rang one evening. I recognized the look on his face immediately. "Your mom's?" I asked. He nodded. "They know about the baby. Mom's insisting they have a right to meet their grandchild." I instinctively placed my hands over my growing belly. "No pranks around the baby," I said firmly. "Absolutely none," Jack agreed before answering the call. When Audrey was born, she was perfect, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and Jack's warm brown eyes. For the first 3 months, we managed to keep the Taylors away, but their persistence eventually wore us down. "Just one visit," Jack finally agreed. "At our apartment, where we can control everything. And if there's even a hint of a prank, they're out forever." They came on a Saturday afternoon. I watched the Taylors closely during their visit, expecting some sort of prank as they cooed over Audrey. But, to my surprise, they were on their best behavior. Mrs. Taylor held Audrey carefully, tears in her eyes, while Mr. Taylor proudly shared old photos of his father holding baby Jack. That visit led to more. They started coming over every few weeks, bringing thoughtful gifts and acting like normal grandparents. But I never fully let my guard down. I politely declined every dinner invitation, still haunted by memories of the pepper tea incident. During one of their visits, while Jack was changing Audrey's diaper, Mrs. Taylor casually mentioned Etienne. "Oh, he got married last month," she said as if it were no big deal. "Just a small ceremony at the courthouse. His Caroline refused to have a proper wedding." She shook her head disapprovingly. "I don't understand why." I bit my tongue to keep from saying, "Really? You don't understand why?" Instead, I just nodded, thinking about my own ruined wedding dress and that exploding cake. I had a pretty good idea why Caroline had chosen a courthouse ceremony. Honestly, I wished I had done the same. In my mind, I could picture exactly how that conversation went between Etienne and Caroline. She had probably heard stories about my wedding, or maybe she'd experienced some of their harmless pranks herself. Either way, she was smart. She'd found a way to avoid giving them any opportunity to ruin her day. Life has a way of falling apart when you least expect it. One rainy Thursday morning, Jack kissed Audrey goodbye before school, kissed me goodbye before work, and walked out the door. I didn't know it would be the last time I'd see him. At 10:10 a.m., a drunk driver ran a red light. By 10:35 a.m., I was a widow. Audrey didn't understand at first. She was only 8, too young to grasp the meaning of never coming back. When I told her that Daddy had died, she looked up at me and asked if he'd be home for dinner. Every time she asked, my heart shattered all over again. The days leading up to the funeral passed in a haze. My mother practically moved in, handling all the arrangements while I sat on the couch in a daze, holding Audrey close. I couldn't cry anymore. I felt empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me. At the funeral, the Taylors came with Etienne and his wife, Caroline. I barely noticed them until it was time for the eulogies. I had already spoken, sharing memories of Jack as a husband and father. I talked about his kindness, his quiet humor, and how he had just taught Audrey to ride her bike last month. Then his parents stood up to speak. Jack always loved a good joke, Mr. Taylor began, and my stomach tightened. Remember when he was 5, and we convinced him his teddy bear had come alive and eaten all his Halloween candy? Mrs. Taylor added with a laugh. And that time in college, Mr. Taylor said, chuckling, when we sent him a fake acceptance letter to medical school, even though he never applied. His face was priceless. The church was silent. No one laughed. I looked around and saw people's faces twisted in disbelief and secondhand embarrassment. Audrey clutched my hand tightly, her small fingers trembling. And now he's up there, Mr. Taylor went on, grinning, probably planning the ultimate prank on Jeremy. Something inside me snapped. My whole body shook with rage. Audrey must have felt it because she looked up at me, her eyes wide with worry. After the service, while people gathered for the reception, I walked straight up to the Taylors. My voice was low, but every word was sharp. "How dare you?" I said, glaring at them. "How dare you turn my husband's funeral into a joke?" "Oh, Maud," Mrs. Taylor said, reaching for my arm. "Jack would have appreciated the humor. He always did." I pulled my arm away.
No, he tolerated it.
"What you do is cruel and thoughtless. I never want to see any of you again. You're not welcome in our lives anymore. Audrey and I are done with you." "But we're family," Mrs. Taylor protested, her expression finally showing concern. "No," I said firmly. "We're not. Family doesn't humiliate each other. Family doesn't ruin weddings or mock funerals. We're done." I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there, confused and likely still wondering what they'd done wrong. They'd never understood, and I knew they never would. 6 years passed in a blur. Audrey grew from a heartbroken 8-year-old into a thoughtful 13-year-old with her father's kind eyes and gentle spirit. I threw myself into being both a mom and a dad, trying my best to fill the empty space Jack left in our lives. We'd occasionally hear bits and pieces about the Taylors through the grapevine. Etienne had 2 kids now. I'd seen photos of 2 little boys with his mischievous grin on social media, but I always scrolled past quickly. I was determined to keep that part of our lives closed. Sometimes, Audrey would ask about them, especially during holidays or when her friends talked about their grandparents. I never told her about the exploding wedding cake or the funeral jokes. She already had enough to deal with, losing her dad. Adding those stories wouldn't help. Then, 4 days before Christmas, the phone rang. "Maud," Mrs. Taylor's voice said. It sounded older, softer somehow. "Please don't hang up." I almost did anyway, but Audrey was sitting next to me on the couch working on her homework. She looked up curious. "We miss Audrey," Mrs. Taylor continued, her voice shaky. "And you? Please, would you consider spending Christmas with us? The whole family will be here, Etienne, Caroline, their boys. We'd love to see you both." I started to say no, but Audrey, who must have figured out who was calling, began nodding eagerly. Her eyes were pleading. "There will be absolutely no pranks," I said firmly into the phone. "No jokes, no tricks, nothing like that. Just a normal Christmas dinner." "We promise," Mr. Taylor's voice chimed in. They must have been on speakerphone. "We swear on Jack's memory, no pranks." Maybe it was the mention of Jack, or maybe it was Audrey's hopeful face, but I found myself agreeing. "We'll come," I said. "But I mean it about the pranks." After hanging up, Audrey and I went shopping. If we were going to do this, we were going to do it right. We picked out top-of-the-line kitchen appliances for the Taylors, the latest tablet for Etienne and Caroline, and the season's most popular toys for their boys. Do you think Grandma and Grandpa got me something nice? Audrey asked as we wrapped the gifts. I'm sure they did, sweetheart, I said, hoping I wasn't lying. They've had 6 years to think about it. Audrey threw herself into picking wrapping paper and writing cards. Watching her excitement grow, I prayed I wasn't making a huge mistake by letting the Taylors back into our lives. When we arrived at the Taylor house, it looked exactly the same as I remembered. I remember the house, decorated with twinkling Christmas lights and a wreath on the door. It looked warm and festive. Audrey squeezed my hand as we walked up the path, our arms full of carefully wrapped gifts. When we arrived, Etienne and his family were already there. His wife, Caroline, gave me a warm, almost apologetic smile as she helped us with our coats. Their 2 boys, Ben and Brandon, hovered shyly behind their parents. The gift-giving started off well. Audrey and I handed out our presents, and everyone's reactions seemed genuine. Mrs. Taylor teared up over the fancy coffee maker. Mr. Taylor was thrilled with his new tablet, and the boys' faces lit up when they unwrapped their gaming consoles. Then it was our turn. Mrs. Taylor handed Audrey a neatly wrapped box with a big smile, while Mr. Taylor passed me a similar one. Audrey's fingers trembled slightly as she opened her first gift from her grandparents in 6 years. I'll never forget the look on her face when she saw what was inside. It was a plastic toy that looked like dog poop, along with a few cheap items clearly marked down from a clearance bin. Audrey's lower lip quivered as she stared at the box. The laughter started immediately. Mr. Taylor and Etienne were practically falling over themselves laughing. Even the boys joined in, pointing at Audrey's stunned expression. Oh my God, look at their faces. Etienne gasped between laughs. Priceless. I opened my own box, only to find similar junk, expired candy, and random items still covered in clearance stickers. That's enough, I said, my voice cold and steady. Where are the real presents? Mrs. Taylor wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. What do you mean? Those are the presents. You can't be serious, I said, looking at each of them. You haven't seen your granddaughter in 6 years, and you give her fake dog poop as a Christmas present. They exchanged confused glances. It's funny, Mr. Taylor insisted. Come on, Maud. Learn to take a joke. I looked at Audrey, watching a single tear roll down her cheek, and something inside me broke. Without a word, I stood up and walked over to Ben and Brandon. I'm sorry, boys, I said, taking back the gaming consoles we'd given them. But these are going back to the store. Mom, no, they wailed as I carried the boxes away. I moved on to Etienne and Caroline, collecting the tablet and the other gifts we had given them. Maud, this is cruel. Mrs. Taylor protested as I took back their presents too. Cruel, I snapped, turning to face her. You gave a 13-year-old girl who lost her father fake dog poop for Christmas, and you're calling me cruel? It was just a joke, Etienne started, but I cut him off. We're leaving. Audrey, I said firmly, get your coat. The drive home was quiet. Audrey stared out the window, clutching her empty gift bag. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I finally said. I really thought they had changed. It's okay, Mom, she replied softly. Can we watch Christmas movies and make hot chocolate when we get home? Of course we can, I said, my heart breaking for her. We'll have our own Christmas, just the 2 of us. And that's exactly what we did. We spent the rest of the day in our pajamas, watching holiday movies, baking cookies, and trying to forget about the Taylors and their twisted sense of humor. The day after Christmas, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw a post from Etienne. Terrible Christmas yesterday. My sister-in-law showed her true colors, cruelly taking back Christmas presents from my crying children. Some people just don't understand family traditions and humor. My poor boys were heartbroken. Worst Christmas ever. The comments poured in almost immediately. How horrible. What kind of person takes gifts from children? She sounds so toxic. My hands shook as I typed my response. Let me tell you what really happened yesterday, I began. You want to talk about cruel? Let me explain your so-called family traditions. After 6 years of no contact, your parents gave their only granddaughter, a 13-year-old girl who lost her father, a a toy designed to look like dog poop as a Christmas present. They gave me clearance bin items with the price tag still attached. Then they laughed at our pain. But this is a new behavior. Let's talk about my wedding, where they rigged the wedding cake to explode in my face. Or my husband's funeral, where they turned their son's eulogy into a comedy routine about childhood pranks. You want to talk about toxic family traditions? Let's talk. I hit post and closed my laptop, feeling a mix of anger and relief. Some people would never understand, but at least the truth was out there now. I hit post and waited. Within minutes, other relatives started sharing their stories. Oh God, remember cousin Jenna's graduation? They swapped her diploma with a fake certificate during the photo op, one person wrote. They put laxatives in the punch at my baby shower, added another. They ruined my son's bar mitzvah with that stupid disappearing trick tour, someone else chimed in. The tide quickly turned. Soon, Etienne's original post was flooded with people sharing their own experiences with the Taylors' so-called pranks. Even Caroline, Etienne's wife, liked several of the comments. The phone calls started that evening.
First, it was Etienne.
Maud, he said, his voice hesitant. I never thought about it like that. Reading everyone's stories, God, we've been awful, haven't we? Later, Mr. and Mrs. Taylor called. We never meant to hurt anyone, Mrs. Taylor said, her voice shaky. We thought everyone was laughing with us. We thought it was all in good fun. We've always been this way, Mr. Taylor added. It's how we show love. But maybe we've been showing it wrong. I took a deep breath. You need to understand. Your pranks aren't funny. They're cruel. They hurt people. They hurt your granddaughter. We see that now, Mrs. Taylor whispered. Can you ever forgive us? I don't know, I replied honestly. I'm glad you're finally realizing how your behavior affects others, but I can't just forget everything that's happened. 3 days later, a delivery truck brought a large package to our door. Inside was the latest iPhone, the exact one Audrey had been dreaming about, along with a heartfelt letter of apology from her grandparents. I sent Etienne's boys their gaming consoles back with a note. Everyone deserves a real Christmas. 7 months later, we have a cautious peace. We meet occasionally for coffee or lunch in neutral places. The Taylors are trying, really trying to change. No more pranks. No more cruel jokes. Audrey video chats with her cousin sometimes, and I've seen real remorse in my in-laws' eyes. I think Jack would be proud of this progress. He always hoped his family would understand someday. Maybe, finally, they do.